Hallo und willkommen zu Folge 229 von ThisNintendoLife. Mein Name ist NBZ und Bally gesellt sich zu mir. Wie geht es dir, Bally?
Hallo, mein Name ist Bally und ich komme aus Schottland.
Great, lovely, good stuff. Hello, we're back. It's This Nintendo Life, and we're German now. We've rebranded. I don't know what This Nintendo Life translates to in German because I put it in quotation marks into Google Translate.
So wondering what this form of German was from.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? It's funny because sometimes in other languages you do get those moments where they just like break into English. In Hindi, this happens a lot. Like you'll be watching a Bollywood film, or you'll be watching like what my grandma watches on TV, just like an Indian drama, and they just randomly insert English into their sentence constantly, and I don't really understand why they do it, but it does happen, and it is consistent. So I don't know. I thought,
happens in French as well, like le weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's some phrases, some words that just get translated. But yes, Bally, I am speaking in German, obviously, because of Gamescom, which I attended, which was a good time and interesting.
Great.
And in Cologne, Germany, which we've been to once before, using press passes for this podcast, no less, which somehow we managed to finagle our way into. But yeah, it was a long time ago.
We're part of the games industry. We're part of the media.
Totally, yeah, exactly. We have an audience.
But you didn't go as media this time. You went as part of on the inside.
Yeah, on the inside. I went to the behind closed doors that we tried to get to for Breath of the Wild when we were there, but we're not allowed to.
You finally played Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, finally went to the business area. It was there all along. Finally got to play it. It was a good time. But yes, it was cool. It was fun. I had a very brief trip out there, only like a day and a half or so. But it's the biggest convention in the world for video games, and I think this is the first one back in public since 2019. So yes, it was.
We went in 2016.
2016. Yeah.
Right, a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. But yeah, we'll maybe chat about that in the future. But Bally, how have you been doing? How's things been going?
Yeah, been good. Bally Jr. is just quite tiring. He's just like my back is very sore from carrying him because he just weighs a ton. And have you
got like the carry thing that you put on the front of you where you like dump him into the front?
Yes,
that type of thing.
Yeah, it helps to a degree, but we don't use it a ton. But like it also. It doesn't protect your back as much as you'd hope. Like if you want the ones that really protect your back, you need like it's almost like a thing you put on your back, and then they're higher or as high as your head, like on the back. If that makes sense. So it's like you're carrying almost like a camping rucksack. That's the like healthiest place to put their weight for your back. But
nice,
we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm also back in Scotland because after going to Germany, who thought it would be a good idea to have a like very quick turnaround to then get on a train 8:30 the next morning.
You're going to come around and co-babysit with me a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be fun. But yes, so if you notice my audio sounding a little bit different, that's because I'm on a laptop and I have a microphone stand with my microphone with a sock on top of it. So trying to get some of those plosives out the way, but who knows if it'll work. But anyway, that's maybe why I sound slightly different, but should still be all good. But yeah, we're here, we're ready, we're back. Even though we've been galvanizing and doing other stuff, we've still been playing video games, and we've got stuff to talk about. So Bally, do you want to let the fine folks at home know what today's show will involve?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. The second segment, we've got your emails, and the third segment, we're going to talk about NBZ at Gamescom.
Yes, lots of fun stuff to discuss, and we'll get into all of it. But let's start, Bally, with the video games we have been playing recently, and you have done a fine old job beating an RPG, which is a rare occurrence.
I've beaten my JRPG of the year, and this year it's Live Alive, apparently. Yeah. So I've beaten the game. You're getting near the end.
Yeah, I'm kind of like in the final section, essentially. I had the train back to Edinburgh, and it was about 4 or 5 hours long, and I did... the only thing I did was play Live Alive, basically. So I got through the last of the kind of like starting chapters. Then there's like another chapter that I got through, and then you kind of get into the end part of the game. So yeah, shout out to the power socket on LNER trains because I was able to just plug that into my seat and then just keep playing the Switch the whole way through, which was great.
Did you not bring your anchor?
No, because my sister has taken that abroad with her because she's traveling the world in Mexico and Colombia and stuff, and she's like, well, I will need it more than you, so she took it from me. So no,
the one time you traveled.
Yeah, the one time I traveled, I don't have it. But yeah, it didn't matter,
good.
Which was good. So I played through a good chunk of that end of that game, kind of. Which is it's great. And Bally, how did you finally kind of come around on Live Alive? Because I know you were liking it quite a bit, but did it kind of stick the landing?
Yeah, I'm really positive on it overall. Like, there's some really cool spoilery stuff I want to talk about, but we're not going to do that this time. We can wait till you've beaten the game, MBZ. Yeah. Maybe we can spend 20 minutes next episode talking about those things. But those spoilery things I want to talk about, for the most part, I thought they were really cool, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Like, I like what's happening here, and stuff happens. Like, there's a lot of game after those first initial 7 chapters, and we're talking about this on WhatsApp, but this game does a lot of the things that Octopath kind of drops the ball on a little bit. Like, I think this game, I think narratively it's a bit more solid and coherent than Octopath is as coherent for a 7-person story kind of thing is what I should say.
Right, also a game that was written in like the mid-90s, right?
Right. I also think that, and there are certainly some cool moves you unlock by the end of the game, and I think visually, like, what they've learned to do with HD 2D just looks phenomenal. It's, even in comparison to like Octopath, where that was kind of like a first stab at it, this game like really nails some of the environments, the bosses, the attacks you're using, combined with like a very impressive soundtrack. I think it's all just very, very high production, and that's kind of one of the things you want the most with a remake, is like this really nice production. And I think this game just really, really nails it. And I think the latter half of the game is very strong in those things, as much as the first 7 chapters also are. And I think that there's a lot of cool story moments that I enjoyed, where I think the game constantly changes pace, and it doesn't feel like one type of thing. It's just constantly doing different things. And I just think it's hard to talk about without spoiling the later parts of the game, but just talking about the first 7 chapters, I think to be able to play so many fresh, little, shorter JRPG style stories, it's just so cool. Another way to juxtapose it with Octopath is, I think mechanically Octopath is a stronger game. Like the battle system,
yeah, totally,
the level up, the class system, weapon usage, items, it's all just a bit more coherent for my personal taste and what I like in JRPGs. And this game, you do kind of need to learn the mechanics a bit more to a degree by the end of the game, but certainly the first half of the game you don't really need to think about it too much for the most part. But then you do kind of need to know, like, right, what weapon does what to a degree, and kind of understand some of the stats.
You kind of like have an almost overwhelming amount of choice with certain characters when it comes to the types of moves that you're able to use.
Yeah.
And it comes down often to, like, especially so the Near Future chapter was the last one that I played. There are a lot of enemies you run into on the overworld, which are, they basically have this idea of a boss enemy and a bunch of like minion enemies, and if you kill the boss enemy, all the minion enemies disappear once that one is dead. And they would often put you in a situation where like there's 12 robots and there's this weird skeleton guy, and tactically it seems like they're trying to make it interesting, but then your dude has a move that literally hits everybody on the screen no matter where you're standing, and it one-shots the skeleton. So like it's like it's setting up this tactical situation, but like you just use that move every time and you're never in danger, which I think happens quite often throughout like the initial stories. Is like you can kind of just very much cheese your way through because there are certain moves that just feel overpowered compared to other moves, right? Like certain moves, like you need to be right up close to an enemy to use them. Other moves, you can be standing on the opposite corner of the screen and still hit them and still do a ton of damage. And I hope that gets kind of like not ironed out, but like made a little bit more interesting in the kind of latter part of the game, because I have found that it was not a cakewalk, but like it wasn't as interesting to engage with the combat system in the earlier parts of the game, basically.
Yeah, you definitely need to engage in that system a lot more for kind of the final chapter. And I was definitely like, right, this is how my team is going to operate, and this is how we're going to take on some of the big bads and this kind of thing.
Right.
Like, you really do have to think it through which does feel weird for the game because you're basically not doing that for the whole game, and then at the end you're finally suddenly doing it. Whereas again, like Octopath, you're gradually doing it more and more throughout the game, like a more traditional JRPG, I guess. So, but
I don't know. I also think that the combat system itself is just still a little weird in the fact that you don't really have like traditionally in an RPG like this, a big blast super attack that hits everybody would take up a bunch of mana points, right? And you'd have to like use those as a resource. But you can just use that move again and again and again wherever, and there's no impact, right? So
I mean, the impact is it takes a lot longer to charge than some of the less powerful moves.
Yeah,
and so there's a balance of like, how many do I want to use this middle power move consistently where I can get maybe 3 of it out now, or do I want like the 1 giga move that will take a while to charge, perhaps?
That's
because
true,
your character can be interrupted, and that can prevent you from wanting to use the big giga moves, you know.
Yeah, that's true. There are certain moves that don't have that charge up time, but I think the super powerful ones always have a bit of like lag built into them, essentially to make sure that you're kind of rooted to the spot, right? Because like turns proceed when you move on the screen, and enemies' bars will proceed when you move. So if you're kind of locked in place for a while, it kind of gives them a chance to reposition themselves and potentially like knock you out of that state. Which that makes sense, and I'm sure that comes a lot more into play in the last part of the game as well.
But I didn't know anything about this game. I'd never even heard of Live Alive before it was shown in that trailer. And now I'm like, that was a really, really cool JRPG. I'm so glad I played it, and I am very much on the HD 2D bandwagon. I need to get to Triangle Strategy. That's one I definitely need to try out. And this is obviously an incredibly different game. It's like comparing Chrono Trigger to Fire Emblem.
Right, exactly.
Obviously with that visual style, I think it works so well for both tactics games and more traditional JRPGs, as non-traditional, I guess, as Live is. But
yeah, I mean, when you look at what Square Enix is doing right now with its bigger games, new Dragon Quest, new Final Fantasies, Dragon Quest is still turn-based, but Final Fantasy is very much a action series at this point. You look at 16, and 16, they brought on the combat designer from Devil May Cry 5 for that project. Like, it's very purely action, and they're leaning in that position. And even 7 Remake is very action focused, and it has the pause stuff, but most of the stuff you're doing is like running around, dodging in real time, hitting in real time. And I think Square Enix were in this conundrum of like, well, how do we still retain that sense of our classic roots with turn-based games? And 2D HD feels like the way that they have decided they're going to go forward with it from now on, right? Which is, I think, is cool.
I think it's great because it works both mechanically, where yes, these are still very much turn-based, but then like narratively, it still has that kind of magic that those 90s JRPGs have, but just in a much more impressive, animated, lighting, orchestrated music, if you name it. Like, it feels like a really polished version of that same style of game without turning it into Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is great, and great for all its own reasons, So like, I'm very much looking forward to trying Triangle Strategy. I'm looking forward to Dragon Quest 3 Remake,
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to whether they do like a sequel to Octopath Traveler, or they just try something like new that is a linear, long, traditional 90s style JRPG, but potentially, like with new characters and new story. To just, as great as I think DQ3 will be, I'd love to do something that is properly new.
Right, because you can still feel the kind of the age of these remakes, right? Like, and I'm sure Dragon Quest will suffer from the same thing, but Live Alive still has, like, I don't know, the enemies feel unbalanced weirdly. There's also, I was talking to you about this, some of the frustrations I had with a couple of the chapters actually at the end was like, okay, so they implemented this thing, which is the orange kind of arrow, the flag on screen to tell you where to go next, because often in these older games you didn't know what to do. And there are a couple of moments where they just take that away, and it's just like really confusing about what you're supposed to do. There's this one moment where you have to talk to this kid, and he's like, I'll be in the laundry room, and I'll be like, okay, I go into the laundry room, nothing happens, I keep going around the whole house, try to leave, and the dialogue pops up of like, you can't leave because of this reason, and then I end up going to the toilet, sitting on the toilet, and that was the trigger, and I'm like, okay, I guess so, and then I have to do it like 3 more times, like leave and then go back and sit on this toilet to trigger this thing. It's just a little cumbersome, I think, and I don't know why, if they went all the way with streamlining it with those parts otherwise.
Because I did really like the orange marker. Like,
yeah,
really. No, I barely used a guide before the end game, and I'll admit I needed a guide a lot in that end game.
Sure,
but, and people who get to that point will understand why. But yeah, I think I really like the orange marker, and I hope that maybe like DQ3 will have something of an equivalent. And
yeah, it's just that it was inconsistent, and I don't know why that was. Like, it feels a little weird as to why they would make that decision. And yeah, it happened, a couple of other times in the chapter after that, but yeah, it just was something that threw me off a bit when it came to the other kind of modernizations that they've made to like the combat system. And like, I think you were telling me you looked at what previously the older game looked like, and it's a huge glow up, right?
Yeah.
Like they did a number on it. Like, it's still very much the same game, but they glue it up really big time.
Because you think that with the diversity of worlds and characters, that even the original version would be quite colorful and different, and it's really not at all. It's really great and brown, and
the combat system, when you look at the grid, like, seems so cluttered and like hard to pass.
So I think they've really played nicely with like the angle of almost like the chessboard on this, and then they've got a ton of lighting and effects, and like the background is kind of it's like a 3-dimensional background and all these things, and on top of that, they've really gone for it with like the cutscenes in this game and the voice acting. Like, it all just feels so much stronger, because like I think the voice acting was pretty good in Octopath Traveler.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It doesn't. This has far more active cutscenes. I'm not saying Octopath should have had active cutscenes, but for what this game is trying to do, it's one good example of a way in which they've really stepped up the production on like 2D HD and just tried to make it that much more impressive kind of style of cutscene, which I'm all for.
And there are certain scenarios, like the far future, where it is basically all story, and so they have to lean into it in a very big way. They have to make it hit. They have to make it land. I think they do that really, really effectively. But I definitely hear what you say about, like, I think because they are not constrained, but like because they're still bound by what the original games were for both this and Dragon Quest. Like, I'm looking forward to Dragon Quest, but I know they will be bound by the original design of that game in some way, and so they can't make it as expansive, as new as what they can do with Triangle Strategy or with Octopath Traveler.
Because mechanically, this game very much is the original game, but sure, they've added on the marker, but then as we've said, like the changes are in the production value for the most part, and that's what kind of what you want with a remake to a degree anyway. But
it's like Link's Awakening, like you were saying, right, where like there's still a lot of Game Boy creakiness in that remake, but they just glue it up totally.
It's much more like Link's Awakening than, say, Final Fantasy VII Remake that really fundamentally changes the mechanics. But it's I didn't know about this game before this year. I've now played it. I love it. I am so pleased with what Square are doing, especially in conjunction like on Switch and Nintendo. And I want more of these games. I'm very impressed. And yeah, I would highly recommend Live Alive, especially to people who are like me, where I'm a bit finicky about my JRPGs. They have to be like a certain length and I have to enjoy it this much. And like, this game constantly feels fresh, and the pacing keeps up for the most part. And it's one I would really recommend if you're maybe shying away from the 150-hour Xenoblade 3 perhaps, and you want something shorter. I think I was between 20 and 25 hours, closer to 25. And for me, that's a really good length for a JRPG.
Yeah, totally, and I'm enjoying it. I think it's good, very solid. Again, it's hard. It's kind of unfair for me coming straight off of Xenoblade 3 into another RPG, and like, Xenoblade 3 is one of the best games I've ever played. Like, it's astonishingly good. So it's hard to kind of like do that kind of follow up, but I still think it's doing something very different and very unique, and I still really like it. So hopefully I will be able to finish it and get through that last portion of the game for next time. But Live Alive, very, very worth checking out. Bally, you played another game that I had played earlier this year, and we actually played it together. We did some online co-op for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Played it over a couple of nights, and
so you were on PC, I was on Series X, and we were moaning about, like, it's easy to criticize Nintendo for their online, but then when you actually try the online services of all these other companies, it's like, it's not actually that much better, is it? So, like, it dropped out a few times, but it was overall it worked well, and was. I think this game was really good, actually. Like, it's very much still just not my genre. Like, because people say like this and say Streets of Rage 4, like two of the best in genre of beat 'em ups, and I really like it, but it's never going to be like something I love, and that's okay. But I still had an absolute blast with it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that playing it co-op certainly helped a lot, because I originally played it through on easy on my own, and I didn't have too much trouble with it. Like, I generally, if I'm going to play through a beat 'em up, it will be on easy, just because there are elements of these games with like limited lives and like the frustrating kind of like, you can almost get knocked into a corner and be like infinitely hit and not be able to do anything about it, right? But I think there are a couple of core elements that make this game different and stand out. I think majorly it's the mobility stuff, like the ability to dodge, roll out the way, to jump and double jump, makes things so much easier in terms of avoiding enemy attacks and hits and those types of things. And they also have a upgrade system, which I think is really cool, where when you go through the game, every level you beat, your character will gain experience and they will get something new. So either a bit more health for their health bar, or a new move, a new special move they can use, or an extra life that gets added to their total, which means that, you know, even if you start on a harder difficulty, the game will kind of almost balance itself out as it gets further along by giving you new lives and new stuff that you can use. So that upgrading character stuff is really nice, especially when you have a bunch of different characters and usually the only reason is like, oh, okay, I want to try them because they have different moves, but this adds another meta layer of progression, which I think is quite cool, and especially for people who are going to come back to this game and play it multiple times, because I think that's, you know, people like Guillaume at RFN, who's played 100 hours of Streets of Rage 4, like, these games are, for people who like them, meant to be replayed, right?
Yeah.
And that's not us, but I think it's cool that they've included stuff like that, you know?
I thought this game was much easier to pick up and play compared to like Streets of Rage, but I could playing it through the game in like a couple of evenings, I could still see like the skill ceiling, and kind of it's easy to pick up, but it's still kind of tricky to master the game, and I think that's kind of what I personally look for with a beat 'em up, where it needs to be accessible but still have that learning curve that makes you feel more, because when I was actually successfully pulling off combos without getting hit, because that's ultimately how you drive up your meter to use your super move, is to avoid getting hit, drive up your combo, and like that felt really satisfying when you just really nailed it and focused for a while and not getting hit on certain enemies and this kind of thing. And yeah, it was like a game within a game to a degree, to kind of build up that meter, and that felt really nice.
Yeah, how do you feel about your character choice? Because you went with
Donatello.
Yeah, with the long stick, which
stick. So I'm traditionally like a Keelik player in Soul Calibur 2 back in the day, where I'd stand on one side of the screen, just poke MBZ with my long stick, from
really fucking annoying.
Often to the point of like KO occasionally. That was just like the most hilarious thing back then.
You'll learn. I mean, if you've listened for a while, you'll know that Bally in fighting games likes to choose the most fucking frustrating, annoying character to drive me up the wall with. Whether it's
I just like my turtle strategies, and obviously this is the perfect game for turtle strategies.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, Donatello, like, he's got really nice timing to like the use of his staff and that kind of thing, and it felt he is a bit slower than the journalist lady you were playing as. But
April, yes.
April, yeah. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I did swap into Michelangelo by accident at one point, and yeah, he did not feel anything like as nice as Donatello. So yeah, I'd definitely stick with Donatello. I also really wanted to shout out in this game like the animations, and I think that combined with the variety of level and just the colors used, like this game just really pops, and kind of. I was never really into the TMNT cartoons and stuff, and barely know the characters. But wow, it really does justice to like what the kind of the style and what those cartoons evoked. And I think for game to do that in 2022 successfully is incredibly impressive. I thought it was I prefer the style of this potentially versus say Streets of Rage 4. Like there's just it really nails that style well.
Yeah, and it's full pixel art this time, right? Because Streets of Rage is more of a hand-drawn aesthetic, and this is absolute, like, detailed pixel art. It's sometimes hard to tell just because of how good those animations are and how detailed all the stuff is. But my favorite stuff is all the enemies, like all the weird things that they do. Like they'll be standing there playing a Game Boy, or like eating a lolly, or like just like hanging out on a park bench, or serving up hot dogs or something. Like they're all doing some kind of unique, fun animation, and lots of variety in terms of the types of enemies as well, and the ones they throw at you, which can get very tricky near the end of just trying to avoid them and all that stuff. Yeah, it's really, really impressive. And there's a nice variety in it as well of like, you have the hoverboard levels where those are almost more on rails, but you can still move your character around and hit stuff. Aerial stuff I still think is a little awkward in these games. It's always been a perspective thing for me of like, where on the plane am I? Like, can I, if I jump into the air to hit this like flying robot, probably like 50% of the time I'm going to miss just because of the way the perspective works. It's really hard to tell. But yeah, I would say that's probably my only like major gripe with how the combat works. Some of the aerial stuff is a little awkward.
When you're getting like bunches of aerial enemies at one time and they're all on different planes and stuff, trying to match them up and kind of take them out was pretty tough.
Yeah. And you know, I think with beat 'em ups, for me, I prefer a co-op game that requires a bit more communication, which is why I think Contra is so good, because the difficulty of Contra and like the learning of the patterns and stuff is so hard that you have to kind of like come up with strategies and communicate over it.
Some of the boss fights evoked a bit of that, and that was maybe the most fun I had was when we were like under pressure, communicating, trying to predict waves of what the boss was doing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Like that stuff is the best when it comes to co-op. But I think for the most part with games like this, it's a lot of like, well, just kill all the enemies on screen, right? And there's not as much of that kind of back and forth and figuring stuff out. You
might sometimes be focusing a bit too much on building up your own personal combo than you are on like actually playing cooperatively in a way.
Yeah. There's like micro decisions to make, so like whoever has the least health can pick up the pizza to like heal themselves, and then when you come across like the invincibility stuff, it's like, okay, who wants to take it, and then, you know, clear out the enemies. And there's strategy of like, okay, well, let's leave the pizza until we've cleared out this area, then we can, you know, if we take a hit, then we can heal it all off with the pizza. So that sort of stuff is cool. But yeah, I definitely like to get back to some more Contra stuff for co-op, because that's good fun.
We need more of a Contra renaissance. That's what we need. We had
absolutely
what was the game? What's the game that was the Contra like that we
played? Blazing Chrome.
Blazing Chrome. I just can never remember the name Blazing Chrome. Like I'm really bad at remembering that one in particular. But we need more like Blazing Chrome likes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And please give them online co-op, because that's really
really great that TMNT has online co-op.
Yeah, totally. And it's crossplay as well, so even if we were on other consoles, we could still be able to do it, which is awesome.
Really nice.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, great game. Definitely check it out. You know, if you have Switch or Game Pass, it's still on there, I believe. So yeah, people can go check that out. It's I think definitely one of the best of the year in terms of quality. Even if it's not like our personal taste, I still think it holds up.
Yeah, I can see why it got like the 86 on OpenCritic. And
yes,
people went
definitely.
Wild. I can totally see it, even if it's not my personal cup of tea.
Yeah, for sure. So the only other thing that I want to check in with Bally is now I'm back home. I got out my old GameCube.
There we go.
You know, it's the one thing that I can't really get access to.
That thing's 20 years old. 21 years old.
Jesus Christ, don't tell me that. I still remember my birthday when I got it, and all you guys came round to my house.
You spoiled it.
Well, no, but the thing is, Bally, here's the thing. You brought all of your controllers and games and memory cards, and you didn't bring...
I just do what my mum tells me. What do you expect? Okay,
Okay. I'm a sleuth, all right? You didn't bring a GameCube. I was like, why did you bring all of this shit and you didn't bring the actual GameCube? What was the point in that? And then I was like, well, something's up with this. And so I went next door.
You would have thought my mum could tell me, like, why don't you put it all in a bag and don't show it? Yeah. Don't show it to Naman because he'll... And I was like, no, just bring it up out in the open. Out in the open. Here are all my gamepads.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I go next door into my parents' room and there it is sitting on the bed, not wrapped yet. So I was like, all right, well, I'm getting a GameCube. So, I mean, I could have predicted that, to be honest. You know, I'd been fucking going on about it non-stop. But anyway, good old GameCube from then, still here, still in working condition.
Great hiding place by your parents as well, by the way. Great hiding place.
Yeah, no, good stuff. I don't know. They were dealing with like 7 screaming children, so I don't know.
Well, they still have worries there's a GameCube on the bed. But...
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I booted it up and I was like, let's play some stuff. So what did I go to first, Bally? I went to, you know, everyone's favorite Mario Kart Double Dash.
Oh, yes. It is slippy as hell, isn't it?
Because I wanted to, like, you know how finicky I am about Mario Karts and like my control.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
and all
not
that
your
stuff.
Mario Kart. I can
It's
tell.
not my Mario Kart, no. So I started playing it and I was like, this doesn't feel good. And I'm not sure, like, is it the lag from the TV? Because obviously it's hooked up to an HD TV at the moment.
Oh, dang. I
don't have a CRT anymore. We got rid of our CRT.
I've still got my CRT if you ever want to plug it into that.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. I mean, I should probably just look into buying one at some point later down the line. But the last game I played on the CRT was Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Back when we were doing the show in, like, I think 2014 I played it, which was a great experience. Like, it was great to play that on a CRT on GameCube.
A good send-off for a CRT.
Absolutely, really good send-off. And so yeah, I wonder if there's a little bit of lag. There's a game mode on this TV upstairs, so I turned it to that, and that helped a little bit. But yeah, something about, like, the analog stick and, like, the movement and the way that you corner, the way that you drift is totally different. Here's another weird difference. When you first start the race, I was like, I'm holding down the A button at the 2, and it didn't work.
No.
You had to, and I was like, how do I do this? I was trying different things, and I was like, okay, what if I just tap the A button? So I was just tap, and that worked. So, like, when I got off the starting line, it was basically like your character's, like, building up, like, all this kind of speed, and then they kind of burst off the racing line. I was like, is it because I'm tapping the whole time, or do I need to tap at a right time? And then I tried tapping at the right time, like, when, you know, you're about to boost off at the beginning, and it didn't work. So I don't know what I'm doing there or how
it is after the 1 on
it's
Double
after the
Dash.
1.
It's like
okay.
3, 2, 1, go, and then if you tap it at the right time, you'll get the boost. And if you do it in co-op, you get a double dash.
Oh, interesting. Well, the thing is, it was working for me by just mashing the A button.
If it works, it works. Do what works. You know?
Exactly. So I thought it was like I was just building up speed the whole time just by tapping.
It's also the tiniest boost. Like
it's not that big.
Games.
Yeah, it's really not that big. And same with the drifting around corners with the flame. You don't get the flame until you get the blue flame. You don't get the boost until you get the blue flame. So you build up, like, to the red one and
yellow, red, blue, and then it's a tiny little boost. And you got to waggle to get. This is how I, like, wore out my first GameCube controller. The purple one was you got to waggle that analog stick to charge up not double dash, the drift dash.
The drift, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It took me a little bit of time to, like, find a kart combo that worked for me. I started with Wario and Waluigi in this giant Bowser car, and that was a nightmare. That was horrible. Tried Baby Mario and Baby Luigi in, like, one of the prams, and
I quite like the middleweight karts in that game, actually. Like, I like Mario and Luigi in the Luigi kart.
That's exactly what I did. I settled on Mario and Luigi, and I went for the Yoshi kart, actually, which was in terms of
Yoshi's got what I love about Double Dash is that there are, like, specific weapons for characters, which they've never done again since Double Dash. And Mario and Luigi's fireballs aren't quite as good, I'd argue, as Yoshi's and Birdo's egg item. Homing egg.
Yeah, totally. Which I did play as Yoshi and Birdo as well, and then I think I used the Mario Kart for them, and I didn't like the kind of base one. So yeah, I think probably the best combo would be Yoshi and Birdo in the Yoshi Kart, because the Yoshi Kart felt really good. That was the first one I was like, oh, okay, this kind of feels almost like a modern Mario Kart. Like it's there's
those
lots
karts
of difference.
are so nicely designed as well. They've just got, like, a look to them, and, like, a rubber and those tires. Like, there's something about them. Obviously, this game's not HD, but it was a very good-looking game when it came out, and I think it holds up in terms of looks, at least.
Yeah, frame rate's a weird one, because obviously we're in the UK, and so you start it up and it says 50 hertz or 60 hertz, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I think that maybe this TV could do 50 hertz better than 60 hertz, just the way that things are set up. So I did 60 to start with. And it felt a bit jittery, so I switched it off and turned it back on and switched to 50, and it made it a little bit better. But there is something, like, playing games at 50 FPS just is a little weird. Like, you just feel like something's off, like it's smooth, but not quite what you expect. And so it's this weird kind of in-between thing, which I'm sure we didn't really notice when we were younger, but now with context and going back to it, it's like, okay, yeah, this is a little bit off, and it is strange that in the UK and in PAL territories, 50 hertz was the standard. But yeah, it's I still think it looks good, even if it is like 480p. I think one of the drawbacks of GameCube is it wasn't fully widescreen, and so certain games have widescreen modes, but playing it on a widescreen HD TV, it stretches out a little bit in a weird way. which makes it a little bit awkward to look at.
One more thing I want to say about Double Dash is it was the last Mario Kart that only had its original tracks without any retro tracks, because it was the last one before DS when all that started.
Which is what I was going to bring up, is like we talk about how barren and like boring Mario Kart 8 is, and like, well, this was this was all Mario Karts before DS basically, didn't have that much interesting going on and even less to do.
And they also had to eat far fewer tracks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I got there, I was like, oh yeah, there's only this many, and I'm like looking at that, I'm like, oh, that's like one DLC for Mario Kart 8 basically. Like almost like half of the game is.
It does have DK Mountain though, which is like maybe my favorite track.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about some of the tracks that I didn't remember that well, or like haven't popped up again in a while.
Some of them haven't popped up. Yeah, you're right.
So I'm not sure if Mushroom Bridge has come back ever. It might have done in one of them, but
has on DS.
Okay, yeah. See, this is where I need you as the Mario Kart encyclopedia.
This is where my memory is good for stuff.
So yeah, Mushroom Bridge, I remember very vividly being super bad at going over because on the bridge itself, on the rails, there is the boost that you can take if you want to go over the top.
They took that out of the DS version.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
So here's the fun thing about that boost is it doesn't actually give you much of a boost because of the shape of the bridge.
Right.
You're going over such a large oval that by the time you get up there and down again, you might as well just go straight along the bottom.
Yeah. No, I did think that. But then also, like, I did the same thing as I did as a kid, which is I got up there and, like, I get halfway up, but it's so fast and hard to control that I, like, veer off the side and fall off. Classic. Wario Colosseum, I don't believe that's been brought back ever.
No, that's a very good one and is unique because it's only 2 laps.
Yes, I remembered as soon as I got there, there's a corner in that track that is, like, a sharp left turn corner, and it's right before you get back over the finish line, and I once again did the thing I did as a kid and just rammed straight into the wall, not being able to corner properly.
That's a tough track, and like, because it's what's cool about it is, unlike all the other sort of stadium tracks that are like in these kind of dirt bowls that are designed for like motocross or whatever, this stadium, it's like a big chain link kind of almost roller coaster style thing that you're driving around, and it's just got like this really slippy clink 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 sound effect that goes on as you're like drifting through like this metallic structure. Like it's pretty crazy. I'm a big fan of Colosseum.
Yeah, and Daisy Cruiser, which I think might have come back in another game, but I can't fully remember.
Yes, I think that was on the 3DS.
Okay. Yeah, so Daisy Cruiser is one that I like because it has that section where the tables like move with like the sea, where like the ship is drifting and the tables like move over, and then you can also like fall down the hole and go up the fan, or you can avoid that and go out the regular way. I think that's a very cool track that is also hard to corner on because there's lots of kind of like straightaways there, and like it's hard to like there's a corner that you go down the stairs and then you go round the pool into the kind of like dining area. That was a little tricky. I think my GameCube controller maybe fallen apart a little bit in terms of like I was sometimes holding down the trigger to like drift and it wasn't fully activating and stuff like that. And also I feel like maybe it's just because they're old, but the A button on a GameCube controller feels far more depressed in terms of its like how flush it is to the controller itself versus the Y and X buttons. Like the Y and X buttons are very protruded, but the A button, for whatever reason, on both my Wavebird and my regular, feel a bit more depressed. And I'm not sure if that's because of time and wear and usage, or if that's how GameCube controllers were designed.
I think it might be both, to be honest, because I felt that a lot. It happened to my B button as well on one of my controllers. But just all these things, it does my head in like springs just wear out, and then
Well, the nice thing is Nintendo still sell brand new GameCube controllers because of Smash Brothers, so I might actually just buy one of those for for perpetuity, right? Like having one in the back pocket, I think is a good idea. So I might go after looking to see if I can pick one up.
Might even get GameCube games to Switch online.
Who knows? Yeah, magic could happen. So enjoyed playing Double Dash as bad as I was. Basically, I couldn't get anywhere in 150cc's. I decided to do Special Cup, which has the Bowser Castle and Rainbow Road, and I'm proud to say I came last in both on 150cc's. Rainbow Road GameCube, is fucking brutal. Holy shit. That track, I remember now, like going back to it, I was like, oh, there's that one kind of like corner where it's at an angle and there's a bunch of boost pads on it, and trying to drift around that shit is really hard. And like you take one hit, or you hit one item there, or you miss something, like you are flying off the side of that track. It is very much like a bowling lane without any rails. Like there are a couple of sections where there's rails, but like that track is just pure, like you got to figure that shit out, otherwise you're going to die very easily.
Also, the speed that Lakitu will recover you to the track on modern Mario Karts is a fraction of the pace that he goes at in Double Dash. He goes for lunch, he comes back, has a cup of tea, he thinks, all right, there's a guy I need to pick up off the track. Okay, I'll pick them up. All right, now you're back on the track in last.
Which means, like, because it doesn't do the thing that 8 does, which so quickly like snaps you back onto the track, it means you lose position so quickly. And, falling off once is almost a death. Like in 150cc's, if you fall off once, you're basically guaranteed to not get in first, because...
And there's only 8 racers?
I think so, yes, I believe so. And obviously 16 total characters because of the double dash mechanic. And yeah, I didn't do too much switching between, because I think the idea is usually to get 2 of the same special item, then you get the mega special item, right? And I didn't manage to pull that off too many times.
What do you mean?
Like if you get an egg as Yoshi and Birdo also gets an egg, you get like a special one that you use both of them at once. Is that not how it works? Because there's the giant Bowser shell that happens. Do you get that even if you just have one character using it?
Yep, that's just Bowser and Bowser Jr. special.
Wow, okay.
You don't need to be both of them. The same with DK and Diddy Kong.
You just get a giant banana, basically.
Just get a giant banana. And the cool thing about... because I played a lot of DK and Diddy Kong just in their big log car. High top speed, nice to be in first place, just gaining more ground in first place. But the great thing about their banana is that you can still get it in first place because it's a big banana.
Interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's very, very cool. And also that banana, when you hit it, splits into 3 other bananas.
Oh, I love it. This game just has so much character that I feel like definitely was lost in the series after this game. Like, it's just... Yeah. There's something really unique about it, between the double dash mechanic, but also the tracks just have a certain style, and it's a really cool game.
Yeah. If it controlled better, I think I would like it more. I think that's the thing, is like going back to it now, you realize how far they've come in terms of the steps of like modernization when it comes to the feel of the carts and the way it moves and all that sort of stuff.
It's you very uniquely handling. Yeah. Like the cart, when you look at the design of the carts, I think the physics of those carts actually makes sense. Because they're kind of these top heavy, wild, almost like Wacky Racer style cart where you've got 2 people hanging off it kind of thing. Like it kind of, the slippy nature of the controls kind of match that character, I feel. But yeah, it's very different to kind of like the almost F-Zero style handling carts in the modern Mario Karts.
Yeah, exactly. So it was nice to kind of like refresh myself on it, to like, put it in my head of like, oh no, maybe I wasn't bad as a kid at Mario Kart. Maybe Mario Kart Double Dash is just, I'm still bad at it now. Maybe it's just like the game's fault and not my fault. Because I'm certainly much better at other Mario Karts.
You are. I'll give you that.
So yeah, sure. I do think it is somewhat the game to blame, and I see why Fran Mirabella gave it a 7.9 or whatever he gave it back in the day. But no, I still think it's a really fun game. Like I have a lot of strong nostalgic memories tied to it. Mainly you coming over to my house and being like, right, okay, we're going to do mirror mode 32 tracks. I'm going to do it for you and unlock all this shit. And
so that's before there even was 200cc.
Yeah, exactly. That was also like a fucking 3-hour thing or something. It was ridiculous, and you couldn't save in between and all that crazy
it was
shit.
Nowhere near 3 hours. It was like,
look, man, it was a long time. But yeah, I think I actually have lost that because of my memory card situation. So my current memory card, I don't think I have access to do mirror mode actually on it. So yeah, that's a shame. But oh well, what are you going to do? It also meant that I was able to kind of start again on another game that it's probably the game I have started the most times in my life, is Star Fox Adventures on Gamecube. A game that is very interesting because it's not a Star Fox game at all, really. It's basically a Zelda game in disguise, made by Rare. The last game that Rare made for Nintendo on GameCube. It was the cover of the Nintendo magazine that I got for Christmas when I got my GameCube. And Star Fox Adventures was one of the first games I got for the system. I think I actually got it on the day of my birthday. Maybe it was Christmas, actually. I can't remember. Because I'm pretty sure I got Jedi Knight and maybe it was Smash Brothers on my birthday. There are a bunch of games I got around that end of that year anyway. And This was one of them, Star Fox Adventures, which I remember very clearly playing the beginning at my grandparents' house, and just like, the whole crystal in the rain and the dinosaur and shooting and all that sort of stuff. I actually had a save file where I didn't have to do that part anymore, because I have done that fucking crystal, like going to the Krazoa Palace, doing all those puzzles like so many fucking times. So I had a save file that was just Star Fox like at the beginning as he's just landed the R-Wing on the planet. I was like, all right, this is great. Now I can just get into the Zelda stuff and like get going. And man, that game runs really well. It's a pure 60 FPS. Like, it is so smooth. I was stunned by how well it ran, especially when you think about stuff like Wind Waker, which ran at 30. Other games of that era, action games, ran at like lower frame rates, but this one runs super smoothly, and I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Also, the water still looks amazing. Like, visually, it's still very, very impressive. It's pretty fun, man. Like, I think about it, like, the last like new actual Zelda that was traditional that I played was Skyward Sword, I guess, right? Like, there's not a lot of games that have this formula.
And it's even been remade since.
And it has been remade, and I'm still halfway through, as we like to joke about.
You're almost there.
So yeah, it's really nice to just get into a game where you're pushing boxes and you're solving puzzles and you're going around and doing, classic lock onto enemies. It even does the Zelda thing where you don't have a jump button, you just run off an edge and you automatically jump, like very much pulling from that playbook. I kind of went through the initial opening area, and interestingly, because I had played the leaked Dinosaur Planet N64 thing that we talked about last year, I think when Dan was on the show, we talked about that, and having played through that, I have a better memory of the start of that game now because of that section that I played through, and like seeing...
Did you play through all of that game?
No, I didn't. I just played like the beginning of it, basically. I don't know if you can play through all of Dinosaur Planet because it's like a kind of like half-finished thing. But having played through that, I now had context for like what that became on the Gamecube. And so like this whole section with the mammoth and like getting tricky to dig things up, and like, the mammoth creating the block, and you use the block to get up to this area. Like, it's all almost exactly the same from a design perspective, which is really, really cool, but just like obviously glowed up for Gamecube and, made a bit more streamlined. And I don't remember how far I got originally because my memory cards kept corrupting, and I always had to keep starting over again.
Don't buy third-party memory cards.
Yeah, well, the one that I have is third-party, but it's the one that you had is the big fluorescent clear one, which is actually very reliable. It's actually very good. But yeah, basically, I think this is probably the furthest I've gotten. I'm barely that far into the game, only like a couple of hours, I would say. And yeah, I just think it's really enjoyable. Like, it's just been a while since I played one of these, and I think that part of it is very clunky, right? Like, so you have your staff as Star Fox, and you like use that as your main melee weapon. You have a dodge roll out of the way, and so fighting enemies is very much, you don't even have a lock-on button. Just when you enter combat with enemies, it auto-locks you onto enemies, which is a really cool change, and it works very well for the game and what it's going for. And so it's very simple, just like hitting them a bunch of times, and they, you see their heart meter and disappearing and all that stuff. And the staff has different abilities to it. So the C-stick, which you ordinarily would think is camera, is actually used for like a sub-menu on the side where you can use it to... there's this character called Tricky the Dinosaur. He's a little kind of like Triceratops guy, and he's the son of like the queen dinosaur, and this whole planet is based on dinosaurs and all that sort of stuff, and so you get a bunch of different ones you come across, but he's like your companion character, and he actually does a bunch of shit. So like you can feed him mushrooms, and then he will have the ability to go and like dig up areas, like find hidden treasure and stuff like that. And so you're giving him commands, almost like a dog basically, of like, go dig this shit up, Tricky, and he'll do that for you. But also in that menu you can change different functions of what the staff does. So you can change it to like a blaster, and you'll go into like a behind the back kind of third person shooting mode where you have a reticle and you have to aim it, and you use it to like shoot at plants and bombs and stuff and at enemies that are flying. But also, of course, because this is GameCube and it's back then, the controls are inverted for aiming, and so both vertically and horizontally, so it's a fucking nightmare to aim at anything. And I looked in the menu to see if there was a way to change it. I don't think there is, so just have to grin and bear it for that, I guess. But aside from like getting used to that, there's also a one that I got recently, which is a rocket thing where you basically stick your staff into the ground at certain points, and it will like rocket you up to a ledge. So it's basically like Zelda or Metroid style abilities that you're getting to do with the staff, and you also find like hidden areas underground where you increase like the magic meter of your staff, that type of thing. Obviously, like there are certain parts that I needed a guide for where they're just like a character, like the big warp giant at the start. There's a big stone giant, you get to him and he's like, nobody brings me gifts anymore. And that's the whole line he says. And he says nothing else. And you're like, well, what do you want? what do you want? What the fuck do I do? Where do I go? And obviously it's a very small starting area, so there's only a limited amount of stuff you can go to. But there's a whole shop area, and you go into the shop with the weird dinosaur guy who has like a very strange voice. And you go down there, and there's like millions of items to buy. Like the whole shop has like 40 items or something, and a bunch of maps and a bunch of shit. I'm like, what the fuck do I buy? And so I looked it up, and you apparently have to buy rock candy, which is this one item because he's a giant, he's a rock.
Come on, you buy the rock candy. How hard is that?
I mean, come on, so obvious, everyone. But yeah, that's what I had to do. So you go and find some scarabs. Scarabs are like the currency, and you basically lift up rocks with your staff, and little scarab bugs will like scatter out from underneath them, and you just go and pick them up like currency. So I went and did a bunch of that, and then got the rock candy, gave it to him, and then he like teleports you away to the next area, to like the ice area where you go to and you do the motorbike race down the mountain, which I lost first time and had to redo because you have to win it in order to get there. I think that might have been the section that I couldn't get past as a kid because I was shit at driving, so I probably wouldn't be able to beat them.
You gotta wait till Bally's round.
Exactly. Yeah, I probably got you to do that. But yeah, I honestly I don't remember how far I got. So I think I am further than I was because I don't remember getting this rocket staff ability or anything like that. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it and kind of want to play through the whole thing. I don't think I'll be able to in this week that I'm home. Don't know if I'll have time to do it, but I definitely want to play more. Like, I was really enjoying myself. I was like, man, I've been sitting here for a couple of hours and like haven't thought about putting this down or just like, just checking it out for the sake of curiosity. I was really, really enraptured. I was like, man, it's really nice to go back to a game that, almost one that is still undiscovered for me despite having owned it for 2 decades, right? Like, it's been sitting there and, I just wasn't very good at those types of games as a kid and I wasn't very interested in playing them. Also, like, it was a bit scary for me because it was an action game. There was these big dinosaurs and I didn't want to die, like, it was one of those games. And now I'm very, very much enjoying it, and I think it's really cool. So I'm sure I'll, get worse later on because I don't think the game has like an amazing reputation. Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be some awkward mechanical stuff, but so far I think it's really solid and I'm enjoying it a great deal.
I think Microsoft and then Nintendo's relationship might be strong enough where this could come to Nintendo Switch Online in the future.
That would be awesome. Yeah, either that or a remake of some kind. Because
this game obviously isn't on Rare Replay for the reason that it has Nintendo characters in it, but I'm sure if Nintendo wanted it, Microsoft might be up for it on Switch.
I mean, there's discussions about that GoldenEye remake, supposed to be announced at some point.
And Banjo's on Switch Online,
exactly,
right?
yeah,
so
Banjo managed to make it, so...
This is just another form of Banjo.
Kind of, yeah. But yeah, I think it's very, very cool, and we'll see how far I get. I looked up on how long to beat. It says 13 and a half hours, and I looked on YouTube some long plays, and some people are beating it in like 10 hours or so, so I think it's feasible. Like, I think it's viable. I could. Okay. We'll see how it goes. If not, then it's a nice thing for whenever I come back to Edinburgh, is like just continue my Star Fox Adventure save, and keep getting a little bit further in it. So nice little thing to eat at and get through. So the only other thing is I popped in Smash Melee for a bit. It doesn't feel as responsive. I wonder if that's my controllers or the TV or something.
The CRT.
I think it just wasn't working that well. I did beat a bunch of level 9 CPUs still, but it just didn't feel as snappy.
God, did the music just hit you like a wave when you booted it up?
Always does. Always. Also, like, I go to the trophy section and I'm like, yes. I can put in. Well,
you can have as much lag as you want on that section.
Exactly. I think I have 247 and there are 250 in the game, so I'm still missing 3 trophies, and I can't remember what ones they are or how to get them. But I remember back when, back before Smash 4 came out and we were just like jonesing for Smash, both of us got deep back into Melee and we both finished all 50 challenges in the challenge section of that game, which I still have done and unlocked and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I don't know, it felt a little bit off. I was playing Marth and it didn't feel as kind of snappy as you expect it to. I was trying to like dash back and forth and like it wasn't being as responsive. So yeah, I think probably need to have a CRT in order to get the most out of Smash Melee. But it's still a very, very good game, and yes, I like it a lot. So yeah, that's my little GameCube rabbit hole I've been going down, and hopefully the rest of this week I'll do a little bit more of that and play some more Star Fox. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that is going to close us out for this section. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break with some of your emails. See you in a bit.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the second part of today's show. It is time for your emails. The well is, the weather's been hot right now in BZ, and our well of emails is diminishing. It's a bit of a drought, you might say.
Always. Yeah, it's hot in the UK. I forgot to mention, or maybe I'll mention it in the next segment, but Cologne, Germany, like a fucking oven. Jesus Christ, holy shit. Like, no water to be seen. Like, it was death there.
God.
So, yeah.
And lots of sweaty people to help out.
Lots of sweaty people,
okay.
Me being one of them.
I'm glad this is we're recording this remotely. Not
anyway, if you want to not make me sweaty, then get some fucking emails in the inbox. That's what I was saying.
Get some emails. We need the well to jump in and cool down. That's what we need. It needs to be full.
Yes.
So if you would like to send an email into the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We also have a channel on our Discord server called Emails. You can post a comment, a question, a thought over there, and we can also pick those up. Mm-hmm. So our first email is from Noah from Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is in Canada. Says, "Hey MBZ and Bally, I'm a member of the Discord server. However, I liked the prospect of sending in an email instead. I began listening to your podcast in February, and since then I've been working my way backwards through the episode backlog while also keeping up with new episodes. I'm currently on episode 95, which is dated June 25th, 2017, nearly 5 years ago. While the world has changed dramatically throughout that time, the TNL podcast has remained consistent in terms of quality and format, which is not only impressive, but also very comforting. Thank you for your dedication to the show. Your spotlights on video game music are something that the show something about the show that I've really enjoyed. Prior to listening to your show, it was rare for me to consciously listen to video game soundtracks, but now I regularly listen to video game soundtracks while I'm driving, working, at my computer, or cooking. Thank you for exposing me to some great video game music that I would have otherwise completely passed over. While I always enjoy the music played during the break between segments, I particularly enjoy the TNL Jukebox. Let's get some more of that, please. I believe the last Jukebox segment was in episode 192, though I've been in the backlog for so long that I may be wrong about that. Yeah, we've done that. We've done some more.
Recently we've done a couple, which is good. So, yeah.
With that said, I'd like to hear what some of your favorite video game soundtracks are. You've previously mentioned games like Octopath Traveler and Undertale as having some of your favorite soundtracks, but what are some others that you've enjoyed? Some of my favorite soundtracks are tainted by nostalgia, including games such as Animal Crossing on Gamecube and Pokemon Ruby Sapphire. To that end, I will fight anyone who says that Animal Crossing on the Gamecube does not have the best hourly music of any Animal Crossing game. That shit seriously slaps. I've also really enjoyed more recent soundtracks from games such as Steins Gate, visual novels, and Undertale. Perhaps that's a strange assortment of games, but it is what it is. Thanks again, and I look forward to hearing your responses. Best wishes, Noah."
Awesome. Thanks, Noah. Yeah, man. I mean, video game music for me is very important to my overall experience with a game. In terms of I would say my favorite games all have soundtracks that are all-time favorites for me, which I think says a lot, right? Like when you look at my favorite games of all time, I don't think there are many on there where I don't connect with the soundtrack. The soundtrack is almost this thing that for me elevates it beyond great to a masterclass, right? It's that extra sauce on top that turns Xenoblade from an all-time RPG into the greatest RPG, right? So it's definitely for me a very, very important aspect of games, and I think more important as the years have gone on, and the types of games that I know that I like and the ones that I fall into, but also doing the podcast. Every week we're choosing music to go in the breaks, and when we do the jukebox section, it's always a fun time to go through and find different music. And I've done, I think in the past, I did a video on my favorite songs of the year, my favorite tracks of the year, and I think we also did a podcast on our favorite music of the year as well, which I'd like to do again because I really like just kind of highlighting that stuff. So yeah, always been a really important part for me, and I don't know, I would say that nostalgia doesn't play a huge factor in my appreciation for music these days. Certainly when I booted up Mario Kart Double Dash, as we just chatted in the last segment, that menu music starts and you're like, oh man, I am hit with a wave of remembrance for all that stuff. But
then you listen to it on a loop and you're like, it's a decent song, but it's not it works for Mario Kart, it works for that, but it's not this something that elevates the game beyond what it already is, perhaps.
Sure, totally. Yeah, and I find that, like, more modern games that I've played with soundtracks that have really stuck with me, like, I think that's the thing that in the future will make me nostalgic for stuff like Xenoblade. I tweeted the other day, yesterday, I'm already nostalgic for Xenoblade 3, and, like, 90% of the reason for that is the soundtrack, and the emotional beats of the soundtrack and how it mirrors moments in the game is so sublime that it, like, I like, the last couple of days on the toilet, as I take half an hour on the toilet every morning, I've just been listening to Xenoblade 3 tracks, right? And like, I don't do that with most games. There are very few series where I will go and just listen to the music outside of the game, and that is always a signal to me that the music has made an impact, because I definitely think that there's great soundtracks out there that work excellently in the game, but don't necessarily work that well outside of it for me personally. I would say Spiritfarer is a great example of a soundtrack that I thought was excellent when I was playing the game, but I don't think I would ever listen to it outside of the game. It like fit the tone of the game so well. But yeah, I don't think I would listen to it outside of the game itself, basically. So, yeah, are there any that kind of like come to mind to you, Bally?
Yeah, I've got plenty. I was going to say the two aspects of a video game soundtrack that make it important to me, or like something that elevates it, is one, it has to elevate the game in some way. Like you were saying about Mario Kart Double Dash, like it works, it bops, but it doesn't elevate that game. Like all of my favorite video game soundtracks, they elevate the game in ways that there's games on my list that I really liked but didn't even make my top 10, but then I still think the soundtrack is like just elevates it way beyond that. I think that's an important aspect. And then likewise, I think it needs to have some ability to stand on its own 2 feet and you should be able to listen to it outside of the game and still feel the emotional impact of it. I find, like, if it doesn't work at all outside of the game, I think obviously context is king in it to a certain extent, but I feel like my favorites all can stand on their own 2 feet away from the game, so listening to on YouTube or something. So yeah, some for me, the classic is like Tropical Freeze. Like that game doesn't deserve to have such an incredible soundtrack, and you know, that game doesn't really have emotional story beats or anything, but if you just want bopping music that is so damn well done, like, it's amazing. A game that as mentioned, like, the soundtrack elevates the game above my feelings for the game is definitely Chicory. Like that game again, like, is subtly a much more emotional game than it necessarily should be for like a pretty chill top-down Zelda. Like, it goes to places that are a lot more emotionally impactful, and that's obviously by Lana Rain, who's just does incredible soundtracks. So I've got to have Celeste on this list, which, yeah, in terms of like emotional impact, like, really elevates that game. And then I realized a lot of the games on my list are like modern indie games, where I think the importance of using soundtracks to elevate your game above the rest. Because I think there's a lot of mechanically very strong games out there, especially modern indies. Like, I think the industry's I think we're getting more and more strong games every year, and I think indie games have to do more and more between art styles, story, narratives, and soundtracks to elevate themselves above the rest. And that's where I think games like Celeste do that well. The Ori games are just...
the Ori music in Ori, both games, is absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, and again, it ties to the story where it's an incredibly strong Metroidvania that, you know, that game would be really good if it had little to no story, but that's not what Moonglow Studio, what are they called? Moon Studio. I'm thinking Moonglow Bay, but Moon Studio is like, that's not their vision for the game. Their vision is that it has to have these emotional beats, and how do they convey those emotional beats? Like, through the art, and importantly through the soundtrack. And I think that's where Ori is like, wow, just the majesty of this game, and just beautiful game. Hollow Knight, again, is another. It uses music in really interesting ways for intense boss fights and the eeriness of that world, and in many ways similar to Ori, although I think Ori is a lot more emotional than Hollow Knight. It's just, again, it's using it a ton. Spiritfarer for me, I personally think that soundtrack does work well outside the game, but I do think, again, massively going for the emotional beats. Like, I think indies are onto something here. Like, they're really playing at people's emotions.
Yeah, totally.
And then the soundtrack, I know, didn't do much for you, but really hit me, and I think elevates that game in its polish, is a game like Death's Door from last year.
Right, yes.
And then a game on my list that So everyone talks about like, oh, GTA 4 or 3 or whatever had the best soundtrack ever because it had like all this licensed music. And I believe the game, I don't know if the music in this game was already written or whether it was written for the game, but it's conveyed in a similar way to GTA. And that's a game like Lake, where they are using music on the radio and you can control when you have that music on and off. And I think the music stands alone outside the game, like it's some really nice, just chill country tunes. But then when you're in the game delivering that mail and you can turn on the radio station every morning. And like I said, when I talked about this game earlier this year, I think there's only about 5 or 6 songs maybe total on the radio station. But because the days are so short and you kind of enjoy, like, I think the repetition is the point where they want you to have a small enough selection of songs to the point where you are listening to the same song every morning, and it feels nice in your beat because you know that, right, when I'm drive past this part of the lake, I'll always be at this song, and that's a nice repetition to work in the loop of what that game's trying to convey, which is basically a very chill mail delivery game, which I think is just a really unique game on my list personally. Eastward, I think, again, really great music. We talked about that last year. And then a game where the music is great, but then goes to like these ridiculous levels of metal, hard rock, and boss fights. And we've talked about it before, is Hades. Like that.
Hades is outstanding soundtrack.
Oh, it is unbelievably good. And again, there are some more melancholic, slower, emotional beats to that game that also have matching incredible songs that we've talked about before.
Yeah, the thing that gets me often in games is like when they have great soundtracks, but then they have that one track that's like a vocal track, and Hades has a couple of those.
Yes.
And when you get to what's her name? Orpheus and I can't remember. Eurydice's song, when you get to her room, every single time I got to that room, I put the Switch down or I put the controller down and just let her sing through that song. Good Riddance it's like one of my favorite songs in the game. It's absolutely phenomenal. But also the credit song that plays when you're ending the game is also absolutely fantastic. Both vocal songs, and Supergiant have done that in I think all their games. They have a few vocal songs in there, and those always really cool. Work for me. Whenever that happens in a game, it's always really impressive. And Xenoblade does that as well. Like Xenoblade has a couple of songs like clear like key moments of the narrative at the end, and like there's one section like end of chapter 5 where there is a like clear vocal song that is like speaking to the emotional beats of what's happening, but really like thematic and melodic, that works really, really well. And those always are going to be kind of big ones for me that stand out and kind of leave a mark, like alongside the great orchestral and like other elements of the music. Those always hit me big. But Hades is also really special because of how dynamic it is, like how it changes based on like when you're leaving a room, it goes down to like the slow like kind of
just that bass line playing, but it's still there's still an intensity to the bass line, but it's less intense because all the other instruments aren't there, and then it can just escalate again when enemies or bosses come into the room and boom, here we go. And it just
exactly, and
like it matches the intensity because you are fighting for your life in that moment, and this is a roguelike and you will die and go back to this 40 minutes ago if you fail, and you are feeling the pressure, and the music is just adding to that pressure in the most amazing way.
Yeah, Eastward is also one I want to give a bit more of a shout out to, because I think that the vibes of that game are impeccable, and like the soundtrack, it has a big reason to do with why, like the different areas you go to and the kind of the feel of those towns and the spaces you're in, and like certain themes when certain things are happening. Like Sam's theme is so good in like those moments where she's like bopping around and doing weird stuff, like running around the house and getting the crabs, and like all those like fun, like very characterful moments. Eastwood's soundtrack really underscores, but then also has very dark, like deep, like very sad moments where the soundtrack also kind of mirrors it super well. So I think that's a big one for me that I love and often go back to listening to those songs as well. For me, JRPGs, if they have good soundtracks, are always going to hit. So like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. I think Final Fantasy VI still has the best Final Fantasy soundtrack for me, probably the best soundtrack on the Super Nintendo, I would say. Like Terra's theme alone is like just top 10 like tracks of all time. It's so good. Like, has that sad kind of melancholic feel to it. Like, you always hear it in the overworld. It's like really good. So those ones are always going to stick with me. I think that the Persona series is just a masterclass in music from top to bottom. Again, another game where you have a bunch of vocal tracks alongside some really like vibesy, chill, kind of like jazzy. Like, every Persona soundtrack has its own feel to it. Like, there's almost this kind of pop punky, like poppy vibe to Persona 4. Like, Persona 4 has this kind of like bright colorfulness to the music. Persona 5 is a lot jazzier, like bluesier. Persona 3 has a bit more synth kind of like aesthetic to it, but all of them have that kind of cohesion in the music that really works. And every single one of those soundtracks is amazing. Like, I think when you finally play a Persona game, Bally, you'll connect with the music quite strongly, because I think it's really melodic, like really good. So Persona is one of those series that stands out to me. Obviously I mentioned Xenoblade, but Xenoblade as a series has my favorite songs in all of video games. Like, the soundtracks as a whole, like, each game has its own identity in terms of its soundtrack. They're all like similar but different enough to stand alone, and like the flutes and the way they build those into Xenoblade 3 is just astonishing. It's so good. And like, so many of the themes and like the motifs that come back are built around those flute melodies that they play. Astonishing stuff. Really fantastic. So like, JRPGs are always big. The Yakuza series, you could say, is like adjacent to JRPGs, especially now that they're turning it into a turn-based JRPG series. But for me, the music that always sticks with me from Yakuza is not like the big bombastic moments. It's always the dumb side story music. So when you go into a sub-story and you know something stupid's going to happen, it has this like very cheesy, like really funny boppy music, but then like you get to emotional moments in side stories and it goes to this like very over the top melancholic music. It's really funny, and like, that is the type of music that has been used across the series, which is nice. So you see it return from game to game, and it gives you that nice warm sense of familiarity of like, oh, I know I'm in a side story now because this music's kicking in and I know this music, and it's really funny and good. So that's kind of like a different approach, I guess, to the music that I like. But like, one of the big ones that doesn't quite fit into this category, but like kind of adjacent with visual novels, is Ace Attorney. The great Ace Attorney has an amazing soundtrack. Like, that series is known for really good themes, like the objection theme, like all those things, like all those moments in the courtroom that build up to big reveals and everything. But some of these songs, like from the overworld areas and from exploration, but also like character themes, like I think the great Ace Attorney does an incredible job with character themes in particular, and the way that they twist them based on the narrative and what has happened. There is that one theme that I always talk about, and I still don't want to talk about it fully because it's spoilers, but there's one theme in the second game where it is a character theme but is twisted because of something that has happened, and like, you see the narrative arc of that character in this song. And like, for me, that is like the highest compliment you can give a game soundtrack, is when they tie it in a way that is so effective to what they have already kind of built up. So Ace Attorney is very high up on the list for me. There are a bunch of games where the soundtrack is amazing and better than maybe the game itself. The Messenger is probably the best example of this for me, where I really like The Messenger. I think it's a solid game. I think it's much better in its first half when it's a kind of traditional platformer than its second half where it tries to be a Metroidvania and kind of fails at it. But the Messenger soundtrack is awesome, like really good. And I remember, I think, playing that the year when we were kind of going back through soundtracks that we really enjoyed. That was a really good one. Yeah, and some classic ones as well. Like Mega Man 2 is always going to be embedded in my brain. Like the Wily theme from Mega Man 2 is amazing. Very classic kind of 8-bit style, but I think that one is awesome. And there are certain games where there's that one song that stands out that will kind of define the game for you. So I think God of War 2018 has that main theme that like really hits. And I think that main theme is so strong that like it almost carries the rest of the game for me.
It's a pattern we noticed that year that we could tie to those kind of AAA blockbuster games is they seem to have like one big main theme that they really invest in, and I guess they do a lot of promotional stuff with it. And then when you try and look for songs beyond that, just none of them hit the same way.
It's very movie score-esque, isn't it? Because that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah, it's the same with Uncharted and Spider-Man. Like, they've got that big theme that is awesome, and then Yeah, it's just like a movie, really. You're right. It's
Right,
just,
yeah.
Whereas so many of these other games we've talked about, that there are so many different songs within the game that hit in a way that those AAA blockbusters is just a bit different.
Yeah, exactly. And on the opposite side of that, there's Sonic Adventure 2, where Escape from the City plays, and that's like the greatest song of all time. So do you ever need to go better than that? No, it's Escape from the City. Come on, guys. Like, it's amazing. Yeah, I would have put a Zelda game in here, but I'm trying to think of like what Zelda game really hits for me. Like Cadence of Hyrule is a really good example, because it kind of takes songs from throughout the series and remixes them. So it's almost a cheat answer, but that's also a game where I preferred the soundtrack to the game itself. But yeah,
which game was that? Sorry,
Cadence of Hyrule.
That's a good shout. Yeah. When you said remixed songs from previous Zeldas, I was going to suggest like Breath of the Wild, but it's such limited parts of that game, and so much of that game is silence and sounds and wind.
Or like just plinking piano pieces, which I think works amazingly for the game.
It works amazingly, but it's very hard. There's no kind of big bopping soundtrack in the same way that you'd associate with previous Zeldas.
There are a couple of tracks, and like both of them I think lean on nostalgia and other games. Like when you get to the Rito Village, that song plays, but then also when you get into Hyrule Castle, that theme is incredible, like very strong and very melodic. But you're right, it doesn't quite have that same. Would you say Wind Waker for you in terms of like Zelda soundtracks?
Yeah, Wind Waker. I was just going to suggest Dragon Roost as because it's the first sort of new island you get to after like your home island Windfall and Forsaken Fortress. It's like the first new quote unquote adventure island, and it's Dragon Roost. It's got its own unique theme, its own race of people. Like as you're sailing towards Dragon Roost and you see the volcano and the swirling clouds at the top, and then the theme music changes as you sail closer, like that's something that just sticks with me in like Zelda moments. And
definitely.
When I played the remake way back when, and I can't wait to play it again on Switch eventually. That's a moment in that game that I absolutely love, because it's your first use of like you're sailing from Windfall to Dragon Roost, and it's your first use of the King of Red Lions, and it really hits you. I love it.
Lots of Zelda games are also just about music, right? With Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, like you play music often in Zelda games, which is
again something that was missing from Breath of the Wild in a way. Like they really moved away from that, and
except for Cass. Shout out to Cass with his accordion, which was amazing. Another really good, a great like use of music in a game. Like when you crest a hill and you start hearing that melody.
Yes.
Oh, it's so cool, so cool. I guess like a couple more to close this out. Rhythm Heaven, just because of like the way those things get stuck in my head, like I suppose, stuff like that is just
good. What did the frogs sing again?
Spin it, boys, spin it, boys, spin it, boys, spin it, boys. I need to make an emote of that frog saying "spin it, boys" for the Discord. That must happen. Absolutely.
Spin it, boys, frog for Smash.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where is the Spin It Boys frog for Smash? Come on, guys, let's sort it out. This is the important questions. To the Moon is also that series like really like hits me emotionally in a strong way. That's a soundtrack that is emotionally manipulative. I'm gonna say like absolutely like crushes me.
I was literally just about to say that game really clobbers you with its piano track to like.
It does.
Now you're going to feel emotion, boom, and it just kind of turns it to 11, and you're like, oh, God, okay, right, I get it.
My heart is like melting, basically. But, I'm here for it. I will happily take it.
Nothing like a bit of piano to do that to you, honestly. They know exactly what they're doing.
Man, Xenoblade uses a bunch of piano as well.
Breath of the Wild, like you were saying,
Yeah, totally. Piano's it's a good, emotionally manipulative instrument. If you want to get to someone's heart, use a piano. It's very, very good for that stuff. So... yeah, I think that kind of like gives a good overview of lots of different soundtracks.
The live boss theme, you got to shout that out. It's fantastic. I turn it up loud every time I get to a boss in that game. Oh.
Obviously, the Undertale connection there with Toby Fox and Megalomania, but Megalomania. Oh, it's such a good boss soundtrack. Absolutely amazing. The Near Future section had some really good battle theme as well. Like the battle theme there was really good.
Lovely.
Live Alive has some great music, and obviously Octopath Traveler, we talked about before, is one of the best soundtracks out there for certain. So there you go.
Yeah, good question, Noah. Until we check in with music again, which I feel happens a lot, but we love to talk about music on the show.
Absolutely, yeah.
Our next email is from Ryan, who says, "Hey, MZ and Bally, Nintendo's most recent free trial was Stardew Valley. For years I told myself I never cared to try this game because farming sims usually aren't for me. With the free Nintendo Switch Online trial of the game, I figured now was the best time to try it out and not feel like I wasted money on something I might not like. Holy cow, am I glad I tried it out. Apparently, I'm the type of person they're targeting with these trials because I ended up buying the game. I'm not too far yet, did one or two early restarts after learning some basic tips and mechanics and just did the Egg Festival, but I see myself continuing to pluck away at it. Are there any games you now enjoy that you might never have tried without a free trial or demo? If I remember correctly, MZ ended up playing Bayonetta 2 because of the demo and ended up loving it. Alternatively, are there any games you would love Nintendo to do a free trial on? Games you have curiosity about but don't necessarily want to buy up front without trying yourself? Cheers, Ryan."
Awesome. Yeah. I have a very clear memory of when I first got my PlayStation 3. I didn't have many games. I had like Portal 2 and I had Final Fantasy 13, and I was just going on the store because back then, you know, they actually had demos on the PlayStation Store and Nintendo didn't have any. And before this, I had only had Nintendo consoles mainly, except for my PS1. And I went on the store and downloaded a bunch of stuff and was like, okay, what's this? And one of the first games I downloaded, first games I played was Infamous 2. And I started playing that. I was like, holy shit, is this what video games are? Like, I was blown away by, like, the fidelity of it, like, the whole superhero powers thing, like, all that sort of shit. I was like, this is amazing. And I was instantly, like, fell in love with Infamous then and there. And I was like, I need to look up everything about this game, what it is, and, you know, the series and everything. And, yeah, I found a bunch of reviews for the first game. I was like, well, I need to go and buy this and get into this series. And, yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite Sony series is Infamous. The movement in that game, like, the powers, all that sort of stuff is absolutely fantastic. And that all started because I was just like looking for demos for interesting things. I think another one was like Red Faction Guerrilla I downloaded, like a bunch of weird demos that I downloaded when I first got my PS3 because I just wanted to try stuff on the store. And like when I first played Infamous, I was like, is this what all PS3 games are like? Turns out no, not all PS3 games are as good as that, but it was like one of those like almost random happenstances that I came across it and I was like, oh wow, this game is really cool. And yeah, I got very, very into it after that. So yeah, that's probably the one that stands out the most to me. And I don't think this happens super often. Like there are certainly demos for games that come out that I know I'm going to get anyway, right? So like Triangle Strategy, the demo came out and I was like, well, I know I'm going to buy this regardless. I think maybe the first demo for Triangle Strategy actually was a good example because that came out a year before the game and it was more of a like, oh, well, let's see if this Final Fantasy Tactics thing works out. And after I played that, I was like, oh, I'm 100% playing this day one. But, you know, the second Triangle Strategy demo came like a few weeks before the game came out. So like already made my decision by that point, so I didn't really have to make a decision. So yeah, I guess Octopath Traveler is another one. Like Square Enix do this a lot, but I think for you especially Octopath Traveler, right?
Yeah, two Square Enix demos completely juxtaposed where Octopath really sold me on that game. And like I said on the show before, I'm very finicky about what I want in my JRPGs, and Octopath, that demo really struck well with me and wanted it day one, loved that game obviously. Then one that was completely opposite where Square Enix gave me a demo was Bravely Second, where
Bravely Default 2, I'll have
Bravely Default 2, my apologies.
Yes, yeah, not like Square Enix makes that confusing at all.
What a mistake. Thanks, Square Enix. But yeah, Bravely Default 2 was just the most awful demo. It was brutally
so
hard and repetitive, and the art style didn't do it for me. The music didn't do it for me. The world building was dry and flat, and
characters were bad.
Oh,
bad.
God, that game. Yeah, it just felt like, in comparison to like Octopath Traveler, was just like, no, not
100% unsold. Yeah, that's the risk of a demo, right? Is like sometimes you can get completely unsold on a thing because it just isn't for you.
But definitely some form of Bally earlier on the show, just as I was getting into JRPGs, might have been dangerously close to buying a game like Bravely Default 2 day one without a demo, and to have played a demo that was so weak and know that was good, because I didn't want to buy that game as interested as I was in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would say another one where I probably was going to buy the game anyway, but just like convinced me whole hog was Final Fantasy VII Remake had a demo, and I started playing that.
That's another good example, yes.
And I was like, holy shit,
Yes.
this game is going to be fucking incredible.
Yeah, I was on the fence about that game because I was like, like I said, I'm not a massively JRPG guy. The more I keep telling myself this, I think I am a JRPG guy.
Yes.
I think MBZ is just a level of JRPG guy like beyond your average JRPG person.
Sure.
Because I think I probably like JRPGs far more than your average video game fan.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I was very skeptical of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was like, everyone seems to like Final Fantasy VII. I've never played it. I'll try this demo. And that made me a day one purchaser of that game. And I think it was my third favorite game of that year or something like that. That is a fantastic game. So yeah, that was a very good example.
Yeah, Bayonetta 2 is the one that I always go to for like a demo that convinced me that I played, and I was like, oh, I actually really vibe with this. But an example of one where I didn't play it, neither of us played it, we watched it, the demo that convinced us to buy it was Mario Maker. That was like, just watching that game be played was the most convincing thing I've ever seen in terms of like being kind of very lukewarm / uninterested in a game to being 100% sold on it for day one. Mario Maker is like the absolute quickest turnaround I've ever seen. It was amazing.
I'd say we also played like the free trial day for ARMS way back around the Switch launch, and we were both like, I don't know, don't really want to play this.
I played a lot of ARMS for free. I think there was like multiple trial days that you could do for ARMS, but then also our friend Ali T for some reason bought ARMS when he got his Switch, so I played a bunch at his house as well, and that game's cool. Like, I think it could be so much more. I think they could do so much more with the world and the characters. But I don't know, Nintendo just don't seem to want to lean into that stuff. And ARMS is just kind of... It still exists. It's the one game trial that they like bring back randomly every so often. They're like, oh, by the way, guys, ARMS is here if you want to play it. Somebody please play ARMS. And it doesn't really work in that sense. If we're thinking about like demos that we've played outside of ones that you download, we've been to a couple of shows where we've played demos, and I think when we went to... What was the event? The Japan one in London.
Japan Anime Con or so? Just
some kind of Japan thing that was in the O2.
Either way, Nintendo had a booth.
They had a booth, yes, and they had Triforce Heroes, and they also had Star Fox Zero, which I think you played Star Fox Zero.
Yeah,
there, didn't you?
Played both. I was very sold on both games. That is a good example. I was day one for both games actually.
Yeah, exactly. And Triforce Heroes was fun because we got to play it with a rep and like the three of us playing through, and like you're getting the experience that you want with that game.
I honestly, I know I'm hotter on that game than you, but I look back so fondly on Triforce Heroes. I think it's
a fun game,
really cool. Just like applying that kind of Zelda puzzle design, dungeon design to like a 3-player co-op thing is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's still a great game. I think my biggest problem with that game was just its online functionality and the way it was implemented, which is very frustrating. But actual playing the game was good fun, right? Like, some of those bosses very tricky as well, especially to coordinate between us and a person who we couldn't really talk to. Was always
we had a handful of different partners or third wheels, and some of them were better than others for sure.
Yeah, totally. So it's kind of like a crapshoot. You just kind of like, ideally, just like with Federation Force, you kind of want to have like a full crew of people. I think.
Federation Force. Oh boy.
Yeah, no, I don't know. The time's probably ticking on like the online service for that. So I don't know. We're gonna have to figure that out at some point. But I would say like another game from that event that unsold me was the Chibi Robo 2D platformer. Ziplash, I believe, was
JRPG.
Not very good at all.
Do you call it an RPG? Yeah.
Ziplash.
Yeah, so the rep speaking to us called it an RPG, and you were like,
yes. Yeah. I'm like, this is a 2D platformer, my dude. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, I think some of these people who they get as Nintendo reps don't actually know what video games are.
That was an incredibly underwhelming game. Like, a bit like the way Pikmin went all 2D on 3DS. It kind of just lost the magic of what the original Chibi Robo was all about. Like, just didn't convert well at all.
Exactly. Like, I want them to re-release Chibi Robo. It's like my most wanted to play GameCube. Like, if I'd somehow had Chibi Robo, I'd be playing that on my GameCube right now, right? But it's very, very expensive. Like, everywhere I've seen it, it's like over 100, 150 pounds. It's so stupid. So, that game is ridiculous.
Of course, Gamescom 2016, we played games like Cuphead Day One.
Yes,
Day
totally.
One, but like, we played it before it
the
was
demo,
out,
yeah.
We played the demo, and that was awesome. We played games like Recore, which I actually enjoyed the demo, and then that came out and flopped quite.
It's funny because like playing Recore, I was very unsold on Recore. I did not
really?
like that demo at Gamescom. I thought it was quite bad actually, and kind of like gave me skepticism for when it eventually came out, and then it did turn out to not be that great.
We had a good time playing Sea of Thieves.
Yes.
You managed to stay upright and feeling okay.
Oh, it was only like I think 15 minutes, which was my threshold probably
right.
for like being able to play it.
All like the Xbox reps for Sea of Thieves were really good at like playing along, keeping the chat going as awkward as it was, and kind of making you just selling the game really, and understanding why Sea of Thieves was unique and fun, and like I think that really helped sell me on it. But
Yeah, then there are a bunch of, like, I think Monster Hunter is a great offender of I've played, like, 12 Monster Hunter demos and never converted to the full game, ever. I think there's something about Monster Hunter demos where they just they can't convey what is good about that game within that kind of slice, and yet they still do it. Capcom continues to put out Monster Hunter demos, and I continue to ignore buying the actual game, which will have to happen one day, but it's probably the hardest game to demo, I would say. Like, it's just really hard to get across what makes that thing special within a short period of time, because it's a big, long-term commitment and a lot of learning and all that sort of stuff. So that's never really quite worked for me. The most obvious one is Overwatch. Like, I played that free weekend, and that free weekend converted me to a lifelong fan of that series.
You got me on the Switch free weekend? Or
I did, yes. This was my plan for a long time, was like trying to find a way to get, because I knew that you would like this game. Like, I knew in my heart of hearts that you would like this game. So both of us got onto Overwatch as a result of that. Nice combo as well, because when it was free, it was also on sale on Switch, so you get it for a cheaper price also. So they know how to get you. That was a really big one.
God, that was good. I'm looking forward to Overwatch 2.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know, in terms of like game trials that we'd want Nintendo to do, I think we've talked about this before, but I feel like we generally have a good sense of like what games we like and what ones we're going to get into. Like, it might have been nice to have a game trial for like Mario Strikers, but even then I didn't even participate in the demo, the kind of free demo that they did for that, the almost network test thing.
I mean, I think Nintendo are far too protective of their IP. We've said this a million times before, but like, Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out next year. Why don't you just roll in a Breath of the Wild demo into Nintendo Switch Online and give people full access to the plateau? Just go for it. You know, like, I don't see Nintendo potentially losing much by doing that. That game has already sold a bajillion copies. Like, there's probably a handful of people who haven't tried or know much about Breath of the Wild that you give them access to that game, and you might get them involved in it, and then they might end up buying Breath of the Wild 2. I think there's simple things like that even releasing demos after the fact just to juice sales later down the game's life cycle, that might be worth doing.
Yeah, I think some good ones for them to do would be like their third-party partnerships. So like, before Bayonetta 3 comes out, do a Bayonetta 2 free trial for people, you know? Like, I think that's a good idea. Or, No More Heroes, like, have No More Heroes 3 have a game trial, because that game seems to have done okay, but, like, not amazing, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would enjoy it, but just haven't jumped on board because of, whatever reason. But, Astral Chain, another good example, like, a bunch of those kind of partnerships that they have with third parties that have Switch exclusives that they can definitely sell a lot more copies of, because most people don't pay as much attention to those games. They're much there for the Nintendo games, so that would be good, I think.
Also, if you have faith that your game is good and you put out a demo, like, there's not really anything to lose, because you're just putting more of a good thing out there. It's like the example I gave of Bravely Default 2. Like, sure, I bounced off it, and they probably thought it was a good game, and I think it is a good game. But like, generally speaking, developers putting out games know and think that their game is good, and especially Nintendo first party stuff. Come on, so I don't see the downside of putting out a demo that is good, and then people play it and say, I don't want to buy it. Or I appreciate maybe that itch can be scratched. That's the danger, but
yeah, totally.
It depends on the length of the game.
It's also like that only really happens if you're a kid and you don't have any money and you're just like only going to keep playing the demo again and again, which is why on 3DS Nintendo decided to put a fucking time bomb on it. It's like, you can only play this 30 times, this Smash Brothers 3DS demo. Is like, fucking great. Well, I'm not going to turn this off.
You might create a new wave of Zelda fans, and all they enjoy is the plateau when the rest of the game.
Yeah, I just replay that over and over. Yeah. I mean, that's certainly what I did as a kid. But also, like, access to games was so much harder when we were younger. It's a totally different world now. It's so many free to play things. Like
when we're having like this debate about what should they expose on Nintendo Switch Online, what should they do a demo. Meanwhile, Game Pass just exists for £9 a month, where there's full access to full games, and it's like, why are we even having this debate about giving access to some portions of games? Like, I think Sony are arguably just as guilty, but like, I think if you're of the opinion games are good, the more access you can give people for cheap, for free, for online subscription prices, I think the better, honestly.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think there's some good examples there of ones that have convinced us. And yeah, I think Nintendo can do a better job. That Kirby game that just came out, Dream Buffet. I'm not going to spend £15 on that game. Like, just make that a Nintendo Switch Online thing, right?
There's just then you take a step back and realize just how out of tune with their market Nintendo are for most of the time, and occasionally they'll do something that obviously does well and sells well. But I think just because Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey sells well or Pokemon sells well, I think we can sometimes falsely think that Nintendo are aware of their market when often they're completely in the dark. And they show plenty of decisions to suggest they're completely in the dark. And this is kind of an area I think they are a little bit in the dark. But good question, Ryan. I think it's important to check in on these sorts of things and work out what on earth is Nintendo going to do about demos, because it's been a mixed history, to say the least.
Yes.
As I said at the top of the segment, we are having a little bit of an email drought. So if you would like to email the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. As I also said, we have a channel on our Discord server. It is called Emails. You can post a comment, a question, a thought over there and grow the community. We love our Discord community. It's awesome. So link to that in the show notes and you can hop on in. But that's all we've got time for in the second segment. Join us in the third segment where we're going to talk a little bit about MBZ going to Germany. So we'll hear about that. Be right back.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the third and final part of today's show. We're going to talk about sausages. That's the main topic of discussion here. It's very important. You know, what is a Cumberland sausage? What is a bratwurst? These are the points of debate that we must have. I went to Germany. I went to Gamescom in Cologne, Germany, which they spell it with a K in Cologne and with an E and some umlauts or whatever the two dots are over the O, accents, all those sort of things, which was interesting when I got to the airport, because here's what happened, Bally. I got in very late. I got in at like 10:30, 11 p.m. to Cologne Bonn Airport, as they call it, and I'm like, okay, I need to get on the train.
It sucks flying west to east because you're like jumping forward in time, and all of a sudden it's half 11.
Exactly.
Oh, God, where'd that happen?
Exactly. And how do I navigate this foreign city at night without any kind of like help or anything?
I mean, you're so good at navigation normally that now you're just dumped there by yourself. What are we gonna do?
Oh, look, it's a fun adventure. I made it back alive, so it's all good.
I am impressed. I am impressed you made it.
Yeah. My sister, I basically had a whole conversation with my sister the day because she's like a veteran traveler. It's all she does is travel. So she gave me she told me some apps to download download this thing and download the Cologne app so that if you don't have Wi-Fi or internet, you can actually find your way somewhere. So I had backups basically.
Did you have data while you were there?
I did, thankfully. But yeah, I was trying to find the train station. I just kept walking through the airport, and the Cologne airport is weird. It's like almost a circle, like a ring almost. And I just kept walking. There's literally no one here. It's like dead of night. There's literally nobody around. I just keep walking and keep walking. I'm like, is this the right place? Am I going to the right place? And I eventually get to the train station, and it's like barren. There's empty. There's no one there. There's no trains. I'm like, is this a ghost town? What the fuck has gone on? And so I'm like looking at the trains. I'm like, okay, I don't speak German. I need to look up on my phone which it's like, on London Underground, you want to get to a station, but it only tells you the destination point, right? It's like Uxbridge or Aldgate. It doesn't tell you like what's on the way. So I'm just like looking up, how do I get there? And I'm like, oh my God, the one to where I need to go is like an hour away. Do I have to sit here for an hour?
You just got to follow the trail of sweaty gamers.
Exactly. And then finally the sweaty gamers arrived. I was in fact the fastest sweaty gamer, and the sweaty gamers did arrive, and everyone suddenly was on the platform.
Bearing in mind it's really hot, so
exactly, literally true. But yeah, finally there was some more people on the platform, and I think I figured it out myself. But I was like, okay, this train to Düren stops at Cologne Central, so I can get on this, and I just have to get off at Cologne Central station basically in order to get to my place.
The convention center is pretty near the center of Cologne, which is quite cool. It's just a little walk.
It is, yeah. The convention center is one stop away from the central station.
Right.
So I passed by the Cologne Messe on the way back that night, basically, to the station, and then it was like a 3-minute walk to the hotel I was staying at. So I got in about midnight, and it wasn't too bad. I was able to get like some sleep, but not that much because I had to wake up the next morning early to get into the actual convention center. But yeah, I did, before I got on the train, I was able to, like, these guys who are clearly going to Gamescom as well, I was like, yeah, you guys going to the Cologne Central Station? This is the right train, right? And they're like, yeah, this is the one. So I was like, okay, everyone's going on this
year in a row, so
yeah,
we know how to do
exactly. Yeah, they're probably veterans of it.
Where were they from?
I didn't ask specifically. No, I didn't get any details.
Did you get a
from
feel
them.
for where they were from?
No, but I saw them the next day at the Yuki booth,
Oh.
so they were definitely part of games industry people.
Cool.
So yeah. Bally, do you have any questions about Cologne and Germany and doing what I did basically?
So
in the convention
how
center?
was it? Obviously, so when we went, we were official games press. This time you're
yes,
on
quote,
the
unquote.
inside.
Right.
How is it different going as games press versus going as a publisher?
Yeah. So there are. Okay. So when you go into one of these halls, they're massive, right? These giant halls just filled with booths and all that stuff.
I think I've ever been in a bigger room, to be honest. Like it is
so,
insane.
and also that's one room. There are like 12 of these, all that size, all fucking enormous spaces. This is like one of the biggest centers, convention things I've ever seen. Like, it's absolutely fucking enormous. So, basically there's a separation. There is the public area, which is like a bunch of big places. It's where Keighley held his opening night live thing. There is I think it was Hall 6, which was basically locked off. It's where the Metal Hellsinger concert was being held, but it's also where Keighley did opening night live. And that entire single hall is like big enough to do like a full stage show, essentially, with all the seats and seating like thousands of people, basically. So I passed that by and it was locked shut because it was being gotten ready for that evening when Keighley would do his show, basically. And so you have a bunch of these huge ones that have like the Xbox booth in them. There's no Sony or no Nintendo, so neither of those booths, but like, Ubisoft is there, and Take-Two and all these big companies. And then you get to an area where it is kind of locked off, where you have to pass through security in order to go through to the business area. And the business area is like a little bit smaller, basically. So there's like a bunch of different areas that you can go to there. And that's where all the kind of unannounced stuff is, or stuff that like is just being shown off to press or to people who are looking to sign games. And mostly, like for the most part, a lot of those games already have publishers. So like there's a Team 17 booth, there was like a Curve Digital, there's Dear Villagers, like these like indie publishers all have booths within that area, and that's where I think a lot of press go to check out new games, essentially, coming from those publishers, which means like for someone like me who's looking for new games, is basically my job is to find games that haven't been signed by other publishers. It's not really helpful to go around a lot of those areas because a lot of those are just indies that are already signed, so I can't do anything with them. So there's very few areas, I would say, to find independent games that are not yet signed but have a potential to them and are looking for publishers, but also showing it off at the show. And there are a couple that I had meetings at where I went to a booth
and you set up these meetings like through their. They're almost like some sort of portal you're explaining,
exactly.
Like online way beforehand, right?
Yes, so there's a website called Meet to Match. This is where I do all of my games industry meeting stuff, basically. All the different events that I go to, whether digital or in person, it's through this website. And this website basically gives you a whole schedule, and you can look through every attendee who's attending the show, get a sense of like what they're going to show, what kind of games they're going to show off, and then decide whether I want to have a meeting with them or not, basically, and then just schedule all that beforehand. And I basically had like back-to-back meetings, like the first day in the afternoon anyway, it was fully back-to-back, and then the second day I had a little bit more time, but lots of meetings. I probably
productive, or would you rather not say?
I think good, but expensive. Games are getting very expensive, man. Oof, lots of stuff is really heavy prices, and it's tricky because you're always looking for something that is going to be interesting and new, right? And like trying to sign games is a hard business. It's different. Like there are publishers do it lots of different ways. There are certain publishers who want to publish like 30, 40 games a year. And I'm a little skeptical of that because you can't really give the attention to those games unless you have the resources to do so. You can't really give the same attention to that many games. Because we are relatively small, we are looking for like 4 or 5 games a year, right? So we can be very selective and like, I say no to 99% of games that I see, basically. So I have to be very kind of not careful, but like very selective and very judgmental and very like picky, let's say, about what games we are going to publish, because you have to think about it from like, first, is the game good? Second, can it be commercially viable? Which is a totally different approach to like understanding the games market and stuff like that, which is why like I'm looking for like interesting strategy games or like stuff that has like PC centric, like very complicated city builder elements, those types of things. Like those are the games that really sell well on Steam anyway.
And do you think it makes sense that you had those meetings at Gamescom versus some other event where there wouldn't be a Keighley and this stage and all these demos and a massive EA booth and a massive Microsoft booth, and you could have just met like smaller developers. Maybe they didn't even bring demos, because a lot of these games might not even be ready to demo, so
exactly.
Like could have been done without all the razzmatazz.
I mean, that's kind of like what the online kind of revolution has done, right? It's done that already for game jobs. I think a lot of people remotely work now, and lots of games companies are hiring remotely because of that. But that has already allowed us to have a kind of section where you can have online meetings as well as offline meetings, and you don't need to travel somewhere to do that. But it's always going to be built around some sort of event, right? Because it just makes sense. And, people running the event, they need to make their money and whatever. And Gamescom is a consumer show as well as a kind of press and, developer and publisher show. So kind of combines everything. But I don't know, it is nice to talk to people in person. It's you get a different kind of connection, I think, a different understanding. I don't say it makes a massive difference, but I think it's good, and it's good because with these big shows you generally will get a lot of people going to them, which means like there's a higher quality of stuff generally, right? Like you will find, even if the game is a big thing that probably is outside the scope of what we can do, being able to chat with those people and like have that set up, there's a meeting that I had with a well-known kind of support studio. Like they're a well-known, like they do a lot of AAA stuff. Like they do lots of big projects with other major companies. And I had a meeting at their booth, probably the most like businessy meeting that I had, I guess. And
was it like a red carpet and you got champagne and it was
no, it's like a smallish booth, but they have like their own kind of section with a big TV showing off and a presentation that they did and all that sort of stuff. And that game is like a fucking a lot of money, but also the game they're doing is like, because you'll find in the industry that there are a lot of game studios that basically just either do porting or they do like external development work, which is basically like they're a studio they exist for the purpose of helping out with animations or with sound design or with like multiple different things. So they're basically a support studio, which means that the only games they get to work on and their teams get to work on are other people's creative projects. And sometimes these studios want to do their own thing, right? They want to have their own creative projects, have their own IP and do their own internal thing, basically. And so this was a case where they're looking for a publisher in order to do that, because otherwise they don't get the opportunity to do their own kind of project. And that's always interesting, right? Because like I think a lot of people hear about these studios and they kind of like, they're not very well known, but there are names within the industry, but they just don't have the game credits to their name, because all they do is like help other studios out. So it is cool to talk with those types of studios and see like what are they going to do if they're going to do their own thing. They have a huge experience of like working on these big AAA games. They clearly have the talent to do it. Can they do it in their own IP? Can they do it in their own world? Whatever. So
you said next year you're probably going to go back and you might try and be able to go an extra day just to get a chance to play a bit more.
Sure, yeah.
Was it a bit frustrating not playing some of the stuff there, or was it all just so whirlwind,
Yeah.
You had a good time, but you just wanted that one more day to try a few things, or?
Yeah, I think that in terms of like stuff that you can play, especially on like the show floor with all the public being there, it's going to be a squeeze. Like, remember when we were there and like just waiting in line for stuff took forever.
Yeah. Well, we had our most productive times where, because we had the press pass, there was like an hour at the start of every day where it was press only, and we were basically able to have incredibly short wait times for at least like two things if we just dashed them,
exactly.
Do they still have that hour, do you know, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, I believe so, because I was there early on, I think, Thursday, and...
But you were basically running to a meeting rather than playing things.
Yeah, so I went down around 10 o'clock. I went down to the public area because I had a half an hour break, and I saw the flood of people coming in. So I think they let the public in at about 10 o'clock. So you have a little bit of time before that if you want to get in at 9 a.m. essentially, in order to make the most of that. But yeah, as soon as they're in, then it makes it much harder to get anywhere or do anything, because it's just like a mass of bodies just in a giant hallway, and it's like it's very, very, very busy. So
do you think you had more fun in 2016 or 2022?
A different kind of fun, yeah. Like I enjoyed being there and kind of like doing all that stuff. I really like talking to developers. It's really fascinating to me. Like it's a really cool thing, and just like figuring out like what they're doing and what they want to do, and the ideas they have. And it's a cool thing generally, because you'll see ideas for games that won't come out for like 2 or 3 years, and then like in 2 or 3 years time you'll be like watching a show or like a Keighley thing and be like, oh, I chatted to that guy, yeah, that was a cool game, we couldn't sign it, but that's cool. So it gives you almost this like time capsule, like behind the scenes knowledge of a lot of video games that are currently in development for like, I basically know the lineup of what indie games will be for the next like 3 years, basically, having talked to all these different people, which is just a really cool thing. And it's nice to have that kind of inside knowledge. But yeah, it's also fun to... It's being a publisher is really interesting, because you're the one who is getting wined and dined almost, right? Like I often don't have to do a lot of talking in these meetings. I do because I'm always interested. I always ask questions of developers and what kind of like interesting like narrative mechanic hooks they have, those types of things.
They're pitching to you though.
But fundamentally, at the end of the day, I'm the one who's being pitched to, and so I get to sit there while like, I'll be talking to this guy who's like a 30-year industry veteran, like has way more experience than me, like knows the industry way better than me probably. But they're the one capitulating to me, and they're like, okay, we just need to get a deal basically. So let's try and like impress this guy. And that was the thing, like walking into that booth with the that external development studio I was talking about of like, I think one of the guys was saying to the dude who was like bringing me in, he's just like, good luck. And I'm like, okay. It's like I'm the big scary person walking into the room, and yet like I know all these people who are pitching to me and like have been in the industry for like 10 times longer and like far more experience.
What's your attire and tone? Are you wearing like your publisher t-shirt?
No,
have you got a briefcase, a rucksack?
Absolutely not. I'm in a fucking shorts and t-shirt.
You've got the shades on, a baseball cap. Like, what's going on?
I'm in shorts and t-shirt, and I have a backpack, and that's me. I look like a tourist, basically.
You get out a laptop? Are you a notepad person?
I have a book. I have like a little notebook that I just write things down in, essentially. So,
did you say you do have a company t-shirt?
No, I don't have a company. I just wore a regular t-shirt, basically.
How do they know who you are?
That's a good question. You have badges, so you have a badge, and your ticket goes in there, and all that sort of stuff. So, it's cool because like I don't have to feel that nervous even going into situations like that, because I know I'm the one who's being catered to, basically, which is a really weird thing, and there's a weird power dynamic balance, especially because I think a lot of people who come into like a discovery role are kind of younger and like new in some senses, and it's very interesting. And yeah, I think so to some degree. I've been doing this for a while.
And they're often younger because publishers want people who are kind of in it and kind of playing games and understand what's popular, what's hot, what's not.
I think so, to some degree, just like have a good understanding of the industry and what's going on, and able to speak to a lot of different things, right? I think one of the reasons why I was able to do this role is because I have such a wide knowledge of all games in the industry and everything, and it helps very much when you're talking to developers about systems and mechanics and stuff like that, and just understanding all those kind of elements to it. It makes a difference, and I think it's good being able to connect with developers on the sense of what you're talking about, because I feel like there might be a few people who do my role who don't have as much, and I think that's probably harder for them, right? Because they're
not a brain sponge who absorbs every single little podcast tidbit for the last decade about video games.
It certainly helps me. My parents were always like, what are you doing with your life? Why are you have no other information in your brain apart from video games? Well, I fucking proved them wrong now, didn't I?
But I think on top of getting a role within video games, I think the role of discovery, as you've described, really does suit like what you're into and kind of your existing knowledge base, and like there are so many roles within the video game industry, but I actually think like publishing discovery sounds like a real fit, which is good.
It's also one that I didn't really know existed. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. It's like,
makes sense, right? But
how do indie publishers find games? They have to have people going and finding games, right? Like it's one of those things that I didn't realize was a job until I like joined the company and was like, okay, I could do that. That's definitely a thing I would be interested in doing. It's very, very cool.
Aside from your role being very different with our 2 visits, and what other ways was it different, like between the years? Was it busier? Was the mask wearing, was that a thing at all?
There was not a lot of it, to be honest. Like I think the main mask wearing was on the plane, where you're forced to wear a mask, like they make you do it on the plane. But
well done getting there and back in one piece without COVID, by the way. That's
I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't have it. I don't know, maybe it's symptomatic, I have no idea, but I feel like I was okay. I had a sore throat, but I think that's because I was talking so much the whole time, like it was non-stop. So I think that's why I kind of lost my voice a little bit, but it's in terms of differences, I don't know. It actually felt very similar, if I'm honest. Like it felt pretty much the same in terms of like the spaces and the layout and like the big booths and the small booths, and like you still have like a bunch of games there that are like, just play Fortnite here, and it's like, well, what? Why? I don't understand. Like that constantly happened. Of like, here's the Overwatch booth when we went, and we're like, well, okay. Well, I guess Overwatch wasn't out in 2016 at that point in time, so it technically was a thing you could play. But yeah, the games like Fall Guys or whatever. It's like, here's the Fall Guys booth. Come and play Fall Guys with us. It's like, what, you could do that at home. Like, I don't understand people who come to these events and. Maybe it's the more casual people who don't really know much about games, but think like, oh, this is a fun convention to go to. Maybe I'll like find something interesting. Maybe that's the kind of people they're catering towards. Cause
maybe you like met up with people and you're all hanging out together in person. Yeah. Like, let's go play Fall Guys together.
Sure.
I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, it is very weird that takes up such a huge amount of space and energy.
Are there any trends you spotted? So like when we went in 2016. VR was definitely the hotness, and like we personally wanted to try a lot of VR, and we managed to try a lot of VR, and it was very cool. And sure, Microsoft was doing stuff that we played, and that was cool as well. But did you notice any trends? Because a lot has changed in the industry since 2016.
Yeah. I mean, I was expecting to have a meeting where halfway through the guy's like, and so these NFTs we're bringing in, and the Web3 marketplace, and surprisingly, I didn't have any of that stuff crop up.
Are we already? The bubble has already burst on NFTs, supposedly, right?
Supposedly,
like, it's already kind of less popular than
yeah, totally. And I think. I don't know. It feels like a lot of game developers don't want to do it. It feels like a lot of publishers kind of want to do it. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are trying to be open to the idea still, even though they know that it's a thing that's going to cause massive backlash. I didn't see any. Like, I think that there probably were quite a few like Web3 things on the show floor, or at least in the business area. I'm sure there would have been quite a lot, but I didn't come across much of them. As I said, I didn't have a huge amount of time to like go out and explore, unfortunately. So I couldn't really get a great sense of how prevalent that stuff was. I would say if it was anywhere, it would have been in the business area and not in the consumer area, because I don't think any of that stuff has broken through yet. So,
who was the highest profile gaming celebrity that our audience will have heard of that you saw?
I don't know if there was anyone like massive, but I was telling you that Andrew Schuldice, who made Tunic, was there. He was basically in the Yuki booth. There was
man of the moment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolbly. What a legend.
What do you mean by Yuki booth? Sorry, I missed that.
Yuki is a UK industry kind of like not governing body, but just like a kind of.
It's spelled UKI.
UKIE is what it's spelled.
UKIE.
And I don't know what it stands
for. A character
for.
From a JRPG.
No, it's not. No, and. It is, I don't actually know what it is, if I'm honest. But anyway, they were the ones who we went through in order to get our tickets and get our space, basically. And they basically have this big booth, and inside the booth there's like a central area where they serve food and stuff, so you could get lunch from there. But also a bunch of small tables where all the individual companies who were from the UK who were having meetings, basically. So we had like a little table with a little stand on it that said company name and all that sort of stuff.
That's cool.
And around the sides were these kind of doors which were like almost kind of secret rooms, like meeting rooms, where like some companies would have those meeting rooms that you could shut the door and have a bit more privacy, basically. And basically in the corner, which was quite close to where we were, was a door that just said Tunic on it. And basically Andrew Schuldice was just in there all day, I think doing interviews probably, or just talking to people in the industry. Tunic's been out and has been very successful, so I'm sure he's not doing business deals or anything. He's just like chatting with people, basically.
He is loving the moment, I bet.
I'm sure, yeah.
After working on that game for a goddamn long time.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to go up. I didn't really get time to, or the timing didn't work out where like the door was open and he was like chilling there or whatever, because I was always in a meeting or something, to get the chance, because I wanted to go over to him and just tell him how much I love Tunic and how amazing the Golden Path was, and like it's the best puzzle I've ever played in a game. But I didn't get the chance to do that, unfortunately. But he was there. I saw a couple of like press people who I recognized popping around the place, but no one massive. I didn't see Jeff Keighley like just bopping around or anything, nothing like that.
He's got his like 20-person security team or something.
Yeah. I was having a meeting with someone who introduced me to a big YouTube guy who apparently has 2 million subs or something. So I shook his hand and I was like, I guess this guy's popular.
Everyone's got 2 million subs these
days. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, him and his girlfriend were just hanging around and just met them briefly. Cool. So I guess he's super famous, but I don't even know what his name is or can't remember because it was like 2 seconds.
Were there many Americans there, or did it feel quite British and German?
Yeah, a few, but mainly European, I would say overall. Right. Quite a few meetings with Polish people. Poland is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to the games industry.
Boy.
There are a lot, and this is mainly PC focused, but so many of like the most popular games on Steam, these strategy style games, these kind of RPGs, so many of them come out of Poland, and I think a lot of it is from the talent from CD Projekt, from 11-bit.
There's like little spin-outs, right?
Yes,
they might
exactly.
work there for a bit, learn some skills, and then go and do their own thing.
Yeah, so Poland has a big, like, if you want a successful game on PC, Polish studios are generally very, very good at that. So yeah, I had a good meetings with a lot of those.
It's also probably like a cheaper place to set up a development studio than.
Yeah, relatively. I think it's not like super cheap, but yeah, definitely kind of a little bit
That's
more.
Cool.
So,
awesome.
But yeah, no, lots of good stuff.
Cool. Any other juicy tidbits you can share with our audience?
I mean, probably not. Like, I probably don't want to get very specific, because it's all kind of behind closed doors type of stuff. But yeah, it's cool, and I do like going to these events, and I think that hopefully I'll be able to go to GDC in San Francisco next March. Maybe go to quote unquote E3 if that even happens next year. That would be a cool thing to do. But
GDC would be really cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
Or it might be nice, if you have some time, like maybe if I go to Gamescom again and you want to come for like the weekend or something, then I can basically...
Could you come and put on two hats where we get our press pass, we can do some T&L stuff, but at the same time you can do your businessy stuff, maybe 2 days each or something?
Yeah, basically. So if I do like, work stuff for those few days,
and
Thursday,
we can do
Friday.
Some show floor stuff.
On the weekend, yeah, so like Saturday and Sunday and go do public day stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Would be a fun thing to do if you can combine it, basically.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's a cool event. I do think Gamescom is very cool and very. It's just big. Like there's a spectacle to it. There's a almost impressiveness, a scary like size to it that
did you think you'd be there 6 years later from 2016 as part of a publisher?
No, absolutely not.
And meeting developers?
No, of course not. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, but very, very thankful that I'm able to do this. It's very, very cool. So awesome. and cool to get to talk about it and tell people about it. And if anyone has any questions, just hit me up on Discord and head on in there, and I'm happy to chat through all the interesting stuff. And also, I just wanted to shout out, we announced a game during Gamescom.
Here we go. Plugs.
It was during again. I'm fully biased. However, everyone should go check it out.
You're very proud of this game, though.
I think this game is fantastic.
This game, the big one.
Yes, this game is called The Case of the Golden Idol. It is a kind of point-and-click style detective game in the vein of like Return of the Obra Dinn. I personally like it a lot more than Obra Dinn. I didn't connect with Obra Dinn, but Obra Dinn's fantastic. It's amazing. And we have a quote from Lucas Pope in the trailer of our game because he played the demo and he thought it was fantastic. So also have a quote from Sean Vanneman, who wrote Firewatch, and Julian Kolbus, who was behind Lacuna, which is another well-known detective game in the indie space. And we announced it at the Future Game Show. There is a demo on Steam. So if you've got a PC, I highly recommend you check out the demo for this game. And so far, everyone who has played it has absolutely loved it. PC Gamer has given us a lot of love. They did an article about how much they love the demo, and a few influencers have played it as well and really like it. So if you want to check it out, it's called The Case of the Golden Idol. And again, you can't take my word for it because I'm biased because we're publishing it. But the game's really good. It's a very good game. So enjoy it and check it out and play the demo.
Any more info you can give on release windows and platforms?
Nope, not leaking, nothing. Nope.
All right, good to know. Just checking.
Play to the end of the demo because there's a nice little tease at the end of the demo, I will say. So yeah, go there if you want a bit more information on that. But you can download it on Steam. So yeah, check that out. It's very, very cool. Cool. I think, Bally, that's going to do us for the show today. Lots of fun stuff to be talking about and chatting about, and I'm looking forward to coming around to your place and hanging out with Bally Jr. Get him a controller in his hand. He needs
Uncle
to.
MBZ's coming around with the games.
Exactly. I need to buy him a Contra hoodie and then give him the NES controller, and then we just get him started on the good oldies. So
he is a lot more interested in like the TV screen.
Is he? Okay.
He will just like stare and watch sport and reality TV, and I can't really game with him awake in the room because it's just too difficult. But,
yeah,
he's definitely staring a lot more.
Well, I'll be interested, if I'm playing something on TV and you're just holding him or whatever, if he's like going to look at the controller and be like, I wonder if I can figure this out.
Caroline had him like at the desk the other day, and he is just like staring at the computer screen and just mashing away on the keyboard and just like, but he's got like this like really alert face, like this is what I should be doing, right?
Yes.
Kind of like this is fun, and it was hilarious.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to it, and yes, I look forward to next time we do a podcast episode, which will be in another couple of weeks' time, when we will regale you with more.
We'll be deep into Splatoon by then,
I think so. It should be out. Yeah, so looking forward to playing that and checking that out. Unfortunately, I missed the kind of Splatfest test thing that went on this weekend.
Busy. Was it yesterday?
I think so. Yeah. But I know what that game is.
I think we know what Splatoon is.
I think we know at this point. So looking forward to jumping back into that. But let's plug things and get on out of here. Obviously, you can find us across the internet, such as twitter.com, where you can follow the podcast at TNL Podcast. You can also follow me at LordNBZ. Bally, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91.
Lovely jubbly. You can also go find the show in various places on the internet, such as all podcasting apps that's available. Just search for This Nintendo Life, subscribe, and you get the show downloaded. You can also find us on Stitcher and Spotify, and if you review us on Spotify, that's even better, because it lets more people find the show, and a bit of a seal of approval so people don't think it's terrible, and they can find a show that they enjoy, potentially. I don't know, I'm not saying we're good, but people seem to like us. I don't know, so go check that out, and that would be very helpful. We also obviously are supported by various nice people who support us on patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can go and get bonus episodes of podcasts and stuff like that. Bally would like to thank some of our supporters as well as a new supporter that we have.
Yes, thank you to a new supporter, Rondell D. Thank you so much for your support, but thank you also to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and Albert. Thank you all for your $10 tier support, but thank you to all of our patrons. We hugely appreciate the support. I should also say, especially in this current economic state that the world seems to have gotten itself into, we really appreciate it.
It's rough times out there. Thanks everybody for being nice. And obviously we do a bunch of extra stuff, bonus episodes and stuff like that.
We've done our show for August, but our September one will come out after our first regular show in September. So it's kind of like a weird kind of hop, skip, and a jump this August to September, if that makes sense. But
anyway, you can go check that out if you so wish. You can also do other stuff, like
review us on Spotify.
Yes,
love those.
Send emails to the show as well. Where, Bally, can they send those once more?
Please send emails to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That's thisnintendolife@gmail.com.
Yep, and you can also join the Discord. It has a few more people jumping in there and having some more chats. Some more chat about Xenoblade continues to happen as people kind of slowly make their way through that game.
We've got a little Live Alive spoilers thread going on in the general channel, so go check that one out if you've reached spoilery sections you want to talk about.
Absolutely, and it's a good place to go if you want to just chat about stuff and find out more about what we're doing with the show, all that good stuff over there. I think that probably just about does us for the episode. Looking forward to playing some more GameCube and coming around to yours, Bally, and we'll hopefully have some of that stuff to chat about next time on the show. Sure. So we'll see how that goes. But until then, thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back very soon. Till then, bye-bye, folks. The musical interludes used on today's show were Megalomania from Live Alive, copyright Square Enix 2022, but also fuck you Square Enix, because I couldn't find a copy anywhere on YouTube, because they've taken them all down, because they're copyright villains, and they think that people on YouTube listening is going to take away from their bottom line, and then people won't buy the game. Well, fuck you Square Enix, I found kind of a version, but it didn't have a proper ending, but anyway, I still put it in the episode. So, it's Megalomania. It's good. what was the other song? Oh, it was it's the main theme from Mario Kart Double Dash, copyright Nintendo, I don't know, 2002 or some shit, by